want to look at this by country now. We're still seeing very high numbers in the United States, now having crossed the 750,000 case mark at 664,265 cases. In the last 8 hours, an additional 433 deaths, and this was since last night.
An additional 400 deaths?
Yes. So now the total deaths in the United States, 40,565. Spain, 198,000 cases with 20,000 deaths. Italy, 178,000 cases with 23,000 deaths. France, 152,000 cases. So now if we're going to step over onto the continent and see what's happening and how those numbers are rising, we had a discussion about Tanzania just last week, and we saw that on Friday alone there was an increase of 50 plus cases, and that put them right ahead in terms of what was happening. And this was because of testing, obviously.
Yeah.
And then, so South Africa also took a jump, 3,158 cases. Egypt, 3,144 cases. Looking at other countries on the continent, we do have some increases as well. Ghana, 1,042 cases. Cameroon, 1,017 cases. Tunisia, still under 1,000 with 879. Cote d'Ivoire at 847. Djibouti, 846, whereby 2 weeks ago, Djibouti was really low in its numbers, under 300, but that has gone up pretty high. 648 cases in Niger, 627 cases in Nigeria, 579 cases in Guinea, 270 cases in Kenya. We saw that increase over the weekend here. DRC still at 327 cases. And I want to look specifically at the numbers in Tanzania, 170 cases, whereby they were 88 on Friday. Today, Monday morning, 170 cases with 7 deaths. All right. Ethiopia, compared with the numbers in the region, still at 108, having just crossed the 100 mark with 8 new cases over the weekend. Still low in some countries like Togo, Cape Verde under 100, and Uganda at 55. Interesting to see that Uganda still quite low.
Yep.
The measures that they've taken in place also cannot be put in place. Also cannot be ignored.
Cannot be ignored. And Rwanda?
Yeah. A minute. Okay, so in Rwanda, just give me a minute to look at that, because I mean they have quite some measures in place as well. Okay, Rwanda's disappeared, but I'll find it in a bit.
Okay. So basically what we're seeing is Uganda is still remaining at with low cases.
Under 100, yeah.
Under 100, although they still also haven't ramped up their public testing.
Rwanda at 147 cases.
Okay.
With 0 deaths. Right? So
the health system is still able to manage and contain this.
But look at what they have done consistently. The basics, the ABCs of coronavirus. Social distancing.
Provided.
Self-quarantine.
Washing.
Cleanliness.
Yeah.
Yes, the ABC washing. They've just maintained basics. There's nothing that you can read or say that they have done that is outlandish or completely out of this world. Nothing.
And you're not even hearing cases of people in Rwanda who are breaking or flouting these rules.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The measures that have been put in place, you're not hearing that, the government went and arrested people who are locked themselves up and they were drinking somewhere.
People are following. It was interesting because we saw a story come out last week about the drones that they had now employed to share and spread this information. So at any one time, you're not confused about what it is that you're supposed to be doing or not doing. And, so they're embracing technology as well to get the message out there.
But the consistency is in constantly, they have not let up.
Yes.
No, they haven't.
The messaging, it is consistent, but I am certain that if you made the mistake of going against those dictates, you would felt
see
it.
Yes. The consequences would be felt
On your body.
And everybody else can see.
Yes. So they know. You don't joke with this thing, you adhere.
Yep.
Now, this is going to be one of the few countries on this continent who will come out and say, actually, folks, given what we have, we're opening up the country.
Those guys are ready. You're ready to go back to work. We look at the numbers in detail as we also take a look at the newspaper headlines. City, Today's proverb.
Today's proverb. Milk and honey do not have the same color, but they share the same house peacefully. Milk and honey do not share the same color, but they share the same house peacefully. You do not need to see eye to get along. You do not need to be the same to get along. You do not need to have the same views to get along.
Okay, interesting.
You do
I
not
think I
need
like
to be.
this one.
You do not need to have the same color to get along.
Get along.
No, I can be deep purple, and you are lily white. We will just get along. The color shouldn't be an issue.
After all, we're all gonna die. We're all gonna be
And we are all
consumed.
sharing the same space.
It's just like milk and honey.
You will be consumed.
We'll all be consumed.
Yes, we will be called to the earth, and we will be consumed, and we will be gone.
Yep.
And all that will remain of us is a memory.
18 minutes after 6. Let's take a look at the weather shortly. Good morning.
"24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
This Monday morning, Nairobi will experience rain showers in certain parts of the city at 16 degrees. We'll see highs today of 23 and lows of 15. In Nakuru at 16 degrees, it's cloudy conditions all through, and thunderstorms will make a debut in the afternoon with highs of 22 and lows of 14. In Nyeri at 16 degrees, showers being experienced around the city this morning at 16 degrees, highs of 22 and lows of 15. Light rain showers in Eldoret at 14 degrees, highs of 19 and lows of 13. In Kisumu at 21 degrees, light rain showers all through, highs of 24 and lows of 19. It's cloudy conditions in Malindi at 26 degrees. We'll see highs of 31 and lows of 25 and thunderstorms in the afternoon. Mombasa at 26 degrees is cloudy and will maintain those conditions through the day with a chance of rain later on, highs of 30 and lows of 26. Kampala at 19 degrees is cloudy as well, highs of 24 and lows of 19 with showers expected in the afternoon. It's cloudy in Dar es Salaam at 24 degrees, partly cloudy conditions to follow throughout the day, highs of 32 and lows of 24. 10 degrees in Johannesburg, and we'll experience clear conditions throughout the day with highs of 22 and lows of 10. In Lagos at 27 degrees, it's clear skies with a few clouds later on today, highs of 33 and lows of 26. In London at 7 degrees, it's clear skies all through, sunny conditions with highs of 12 and lows of 7. Paris at 12 degrees is clear this morning, highs of 22 and lows of 11. And finally, New York at 13 degrees is partly cloudy with cloudy conditions to follow in the afternoon, experiencing highs of 16 and lows of 9.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
The situation room is Kenya's biggest conversation.
Mornings
Welcome
done
to
right.
the room.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
www.spicefm.co.ke. We're also live streaming on Facebook, Spice FM KE, Twitter, Spice FM KE, as well as YouTube. Welcome, Isaac Kikwai Baturos, who has posted on Facebook that you're following us from North Carolina, USA. Good morning. CT Muga. Let's take a look at the headlines now.
Moto. Yes. Inside story of Keroche KRA long-running 9.1B. The headline says 9B, it's particularly 9.1B billion tax battle. It's a 14-year battle.
14 years.
14 years. With court rulings saying that the demands, the High Court, by KRA were unjustified. Then the twist comes in. KRA says that the tax that they were levying on two products, there's one called Vienna, there was another ready-to-drink vodka, a concoction. They said, no, it wasn't 45% tax, it was 60%. So you backdate it. Now, and there's this whooping amount that is being claimed. And Keroche on the side of table documents showing that we were being painted as an organization that doesn't pay our taxes, but we have been paying our taxes. Now, KRA has made a mistake, which they have admitted they have. But even the money that they are talking about and these products, we stopped producing them over 7 years ago. So what are these taxes that they are demanding? They know very well we don't have the sort of money they're talking about in our accounts. They know very well we have not made the sort of money that would draw or would attract such taxes. So why are they demanding this? So they are claiming that it clearly means that they've been targeted, to put it in very simple terms. And it goes on further to say that this is something that seems to target local enterprises that seem to be doing well.
This is killing local enterprises.
That is what they're saying, that if you look at everything that's going on, they're not being treated fairly. And KRA seems to be insisting. And KRA is using the powers that they have to essentially frustrate the business enterprise.
I don't think they've been, in no uncertain terms, they've not been shy about what they feel the target is about because of the fact that they innovate. I mean, just some of the products that you mentioned now, they innovate and they create, and they could be causing a threat to the resident big brother. And they've not been shy in talking about those allegations that, somebody doesn't like the fact that we are producing something that people can afford and enjoy.
Peter Kuguru of Software Company, MD, has raised similar sentiments. He is also a local entrepreneur. And he has said that, it's not that we are against paying taxes. It's our obligation. We agree. But it should not be used to kill our industries.
Right. Of course, we saw that Friday was the deadline that Keroche had to pay the 500 million, and she wanted to go to court. And so she was given a 3-day reprieve for them to discuss it today in terms of what the courts would say, in terms of being given more time. Because essentially, if they had not paid this amount by Friday, then the entire 9 billion shillings that is being requested then would be requested at one point. But she said, look at the times in which we are in. There are certain amounts we need to be paying to the bank every month for loans and facilities that we are taking to keep the business afloat. Where am I to get this money from if I am going to remain in business? So, again, it's up for mention today. Let's see
what
how it will
goes.
Happen, right?
Kogoro is basically talking about his own tribulations.
And he's a many also.
Yep.
Remember Kogoro, Softer, and initially he was also selling some alcoholic beverages as well.
He was doing very well when he was simply producing some busa-like concoction. And then he went into spirits.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the view that was taken by very many people that the spread of cheap alcohol in certain parts of this country were due to him. And unfortunately, some of that alcohol was considered responsible for people going blind, people becoming lethargic. Essentially, they say that the alcoholic beverage that was produced by that particular company was really not very fit for human consumption. That is what it boiled down to.
But then there was also the issues that he had with KRA demanding hefty, coming up with various taxation regimes and just putting them under. Softer as well, Softer company, and the drinks that they've been making, same kind of stuff. We also saw the same kind of, tribulations befalling other companies like Mastermind Tobacco, right? Because there's a big boy who's already operating.
Yeah.
When you come up with your own, this is a local company. What should the government be doing to protect such local enterprises? Work with them, support them, so that you ensure that you're following working within the standards, producing, products that are within the standards, but also just protecting you.
In the ideal situation, that should be the case, whereby you want to bring as many players into the fold as possible to make sure that you foster growth and economic development in the country. That should be. But then, unfortunately, selfishness overrides such development tenets. Unfortunately, this is the thing.
What appears there is mentioned by a certain chief manager who's in charge of large taxes, a gentleman with the name of Mr. Muiruri. And he has countered the discussions or the assertions that Keroche has made and said that they ought to have known how to classify their beverages. But the classification is not done by the brewer.
It isn't. They don't do it for themselves.
They don't classify it. They say, no, argument, but they should have ensured that this particular beverage was put under a correct classification.
Again, not their job.
This is a back and forth.
Back and forth.
It's a back and forth and back and forth. And
each party has a point. I mean, the regulator, the taxman. The taxman does not create the tax. He just collects. The taxes are created elsewhere, and it's put in certain categories. Now, if you're the one who's reporting, you're saying this is what my product is. My product fits in this category because of the descriptions. Now you start having a back and forth. Does it actually meet the specifications for that category or does it not? And that's a conversation that you ought to be having back and forth. I think the whole issue here is just open communication. Come in, as KRA said, all right, let's review your product. As you launch this product, this is the criteria we're using, and this is the tax that we think that you ought to be
I would have assumed that's what they do.
You would have assumed that's what they do from the get-go.
Because really, if you're talking about a product, you see, the dispute revolves around the content of these drinks.
Yes.
And because it's the content that now raises the issue of tax, whether it's VAT, whether it's excise tax, or whether it's both of them combined.
Yep.
That's where it comes in. But I thought these are things that should be actually resolved even before the thing is produced and sold.
It should.
Even before it's put on the shelves, this should have been sorted out, unfortunately. So it's clear that at some point, whether it was at the point of regulation or the part of departmentalization of taxes, that did not happen. Later on, somebody realized, we actually didn't do this. And so we're going to then pinpoint on this issue and then backtrack for the number of years that it has been in the market, which if we want to look at it on one side, it really is not fair.
But if we take this discussion out of what has been reported in the papers and ask ourselves, is this industry a viable industry that is useful to the economy? The answer would be yes.
Yes, it is. I mean,
so the question is Is there no other way you can resolve this issue? Agree on the tax that should be paid, ensure that it gets paid. If you say immediately, that won't happen.
And if just to drag it out just a little bit, CT, if you talk about is it something that contributes to the society? Absolutely. People might think, okay, then what is alcohol consumption? But it's a lot more than that. It's the provision of jobs. It's the elevating of the economic profile of the country by virtue of the fact that you have a resident business still domiciled here, producing here, using local expertise, hiring local people,
using local products.
So in terms of what it does for the economy, it's a big deal.
Oh, it is a big deal. There are farmers who rely very heavily on this industry. Very, very heavily. And in fact, their livelihood is derived mainly from this particular
From
product.
what they do,
Just look at what you need to produce. You know, people think of the alcohol. What is it before it becomes alcohol? And how much of it do you need? Then let's go to the glass industry. All right? The industry. Let's go to the water industry.
Let's go to labeling.
They touch on very many aspects of commerce. So they are useful from that perspective. Now, couldn't an amicable way not be found? Because this pissing contest isn't very useful.
It's not
No,
working.
It's not
A
working.
report by PwC, which was involved in the tax tussle, stated that Keroche and KRA the war could be resolved from a technical perspective. But since each party is holding to its position, it's only the courts that can help find a solution. This is a matter that could be resolved, but now everybody's just
This
holding
could have
to their
even been
position.
sorted out in arbitration.
Yes.
It could have been.
You know, there is a tribunal that deals with resolving such matters.
They went to arbitration, remember?
They did.
The last ruling we saw was the one that was coming from the tax appeals tribunal.
Tribunal, yes.
Right? They went there, and now they lost, and Keroche is saying, no, we need to push this further. Let's go to the courts.
It would
further
everyone's
interpretation
interest
of
would
this.
be served well if they could come to some understanding as to what needs to be paid and what mechanism needs to be put in place to have it paid. To ask for it to be paid at once, that won't happen, clearly.
Yeah.
That's not what happened.
Yep.
No.
26 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is a situation room with Kenya's biggest conversation. You can download the Standard e-paper app from Google Play Store and Apple App Store, and you'll get to read that story, inside story of Kerache, KRA, long-running 9 billion shillings tax battle, being given prominence there on pages 6 and 7. Let's take a look at traffic shortly, and then the conversation continues.
All right, looks like a quiet morning on the streets this morning so far. Not much traffic coming off Mombasa Road. Have a little bit of a hiccup right around the SGR, which is expected with the continued construction of the road behind the ICD. But that you should be fine thereafter. Getting into the city centre will not be much of a headache today. Joining from Langata Road or from Ngong Road as well as Wayaki Way. Thika Road and then headed into the city looks absolutely fine. Taking a peek into Mombasa, it looks clear right in the middle of the town, getting out from the ferry area as well into Kisumu and Orobote Road, heading towards the airport. It's the all clear. That's what we're giving it this morning. We'll take a look in a short while and see how things progress as more people get up and get going in a short while. But for now, it all looks good. Anything that we should know about that you do see, let us know. Spice FMKE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter. If something pops out at you, let us know and we'll share.
Spice up your life.
Before we look at
Mature, intelligent talk every morning.
Let's take a look at the main headline on the Standard this morning. The fixers. Schemers or trumpets. Jubilee Vice Chairman David Murathe and Kotu boss Francis Atwoli have become the bearers of blunt political messages since the handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga, and their predictions are coming to pass. This is given some space on page 2 of the Standard. it's a full-page story, basically just looking at David Murathe and Francis Atwoli becoming the emissaries of blunt political messages after the truce between President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga in March 2018. Murathe began an open campaign against DP William Ruto that initially appeared to be a personal mission, but it's now evident that more powerful forces are arranged against the DP, who has alleged the system is plotting his downfall. Lethal punch. Murathe, an eloquent political speaker who packs a lethal punch on the podium, is backing the leadership of Jubilee Party after the president reportedly declined his resignation as vice chairperson. So it was the president who declined. Murathe was actually clear on his mind that he wanted to quit. All right. So yeah, the back and forth on the Jubilee political party really has taken center stage when it comes to politics. So politics that we had forgotten for a couple of days.
That we could actually do without.
Yeah, that we could do without. But we were reminded that, political parties still do exist. And a political party called Jubilee ought to have done something. It had promised that it was going to hold elections in March because of COVID-19. Now they wrote to the Register of Political Parties saying, you know what, come on, you can see this.
You can see what's
corona.
going on.
We can't really hold elections. But our party's top organ has met and created some, and appointed some people to the National Management Committee of the party. That appears to have sidelined William Ruto's supporters or henchmen, so to speak.
Somebody's not happy.
And now they're back at it. And we're seeing even stories saying that Ruto is planning to be operating from Jubilee headquarters at least once a week, just to show them that I am in charge.
So essentially what we're discussing here is Jubilee Party politics.
It's Jubilee Party politics.
Okay.
This is it. It's the back and forth of Jubilee Party. And the players now, the story today is basically positioning Murathe and Koto Secretary General Francis Atwoli, who always keeps reminding everybody that he's a member of KANU. So his involvement in this, in Jubilee Manenos, yet he's a KANU member, I don't know.
Right.
So let's go to Standard, to the nation.
Moving on swiftly about other things that are going on in the nation, literally. I know there's something that's going to, invite your angst, Eric. But before we go to that, let's look at the mudslides. Floods kill 4 and 23 missing. Before we go to the main story, at least 4 people were killed and 23 are still missing by yesterday evening after flash floods and mudslides hit Chesengon Market and neighboring villages on the West Pokot and Elgeyo Marakwet border. Same West Pokot where we had the major landslide in October last year, and they've bore the brunt of this once again. Rift Valley Regional Coordinator, our friend George Natembea, said 23 people who were injured were taken to the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital in Eldoret, and nearly 500 families from the 2 counties were displaced. Last night, he talked about the fact that, they're still searching for bodies. They're sure that quite a number of people, by virtue of the fact that they are missing, unfortunately, are dead. And so they are continuing with that search today. Unfortunately, the rains are not letting up. From the Kenya Met, we heard that, this will continue for some time. Some 350 families from West Pokot and 143 from Elgeyo Marakwet were displaced by the floods, bringing the total to 493. A total of 4,000 people from Cheptulei and Chesongon villages had also been left homeless, and he outlined plans to handle the situation. On the West Pokot side, he said, we will have a command center in Cheputei Secondary School and Sambalat Secondary School on the Marakwet side. So this is a major thing that we're talking about here.
This is a big one.
4,000 people
displaced.
From 2 villages displaced and left homeless.
And the rains haven't abated.
No. They're going to continue, according to the Met, at least for the next 2 weeks, at the very least.
Just to add a little salt to this particular wound, the lake hasn't stopped rising either. More and more families keep getting displaced in the Budalangi area and in all those places that border the lake.
Even across into Uganda.
Yes.
The President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni was giving his address, as he always does, last night. He spoke about corona, and also he went into the matters of Lake Victoria.
Yeah, but I mean, if you just want to look across the country.
The lake is rising. People are being displaced. There's an island that he went to visit yesterday because this island is actually basically just being, what's the word that you use?
Submerged. In short,
Naivasha.
it's about to disappear.
It's about to disappear. Naivasha, drownings. They're recording drownings there. In Taita Taveta County, over 27 families left homeless because of landslides in the Wundanyi sub-county. County Red Cross Society coordinator Jora Moranga said 18 houses are completely destroyed, forcing families to seek shelter elsewhere. In Mombasa, residents at Muroto on the shores of the Indian Ocean woke up to flooded houses following a night of heavy rain. And people are talking about the fact that they're living in fear. In Narok County, families living in mudslide-prone areas have been urged to move to safer ground. County Commissioner Felix Kisalu said that parts of the region neighboring the Masai Mara forest could experience more mudslides. Unfortunately, a young boy was buried alive on Friday night after a mudslide swept his family's home away.
It's
all these areas that you speak of are hilly, whether it's Wundanyi, whether it's the Elgeyo Marakwet, they have escarpments. And the truth of the matter is you will also find that some of these areas have been deforested.
That's the main
That's
issue.
the main issue. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
That story of corruption rears its head again.
Yet again, they may have. You see, the issue of essentially harvesting the forest is a good thing. But the culture of reforesting has never taken root.
It hasn't.
And that's why the mudslides are the way they are. Because there's nothing to stop the movement.
Somebody who visited West Pokot, was it 5 years ago, was telling me, well, I had been to West Pokot many times, and this time I went to West Pokot in the hilly areas, and I was looking at it and wondering, what happened to the trees? Gone. And now you could basically just see bare land. And, of course, a couple of years later, when you just start hearing of mudslides and landslides, it's basically because there's nothing holding it.
And then there'll be flash floods.
There will be, and because of this, nature always answers back. And I remember Wangari Maathai said one time when she spoke, and she said, you know what, we don't have a problem cutting trees for survival. That is all. Cutting down trees for survival. That is all well and good. But for every tree that comes down, 3 need to be planted to eventually replace it, because it's going to take some time for that tree to get back to where it was. So let's have 3 in its place to make sure that it does something.
And don't
for the
plant
earth.
when you're cutting.
No, before, before obviously.
Plant first.
Plant first,
And
Then-
then
you cut.
Because this is what we see. This is a direct result of
If
that.
you look at the forest cover that this country had, not 10 years ago, just 5 years ago, and what it has now, the forest cover has reduced significantly.
Yeah.
Yes. And let me tell you something. What is of interest also, you will find that even when the rains abate, what remains of the forest, you will start hearing of forest fires also.
Yeah.
It's a downward spiraling vicious cycle. And we all know that at the heart of it is this impunity that brings about corruption that we keep talking about. Because there's nothing we're discussing here that cannot be resolved. Nothing.
And this corruption, by the way, as we look into the next headline that Ndu was saying, it's not about the government.
No.
It's about the people.
Yes.
It is
You've
about
been
the
told
people.
stop cutting trees. You've been told reduce.
You've been told even plant more.
plant more trees.
You're even offered trees to plant.
You're even given
Yeah,
trees
for
and you're
free.
told, go and plant, and you're like, why? I just need to cut my tree today. I mean, I need firewood today.
And the same attitude of why I just needed a drink.
Yeah.
All right. I needed a drink.
And
It
that's
was
why
a
I did
Sunday
this.
afternoon. And that's why I decided to call my parents and see how they could get me out of a sticky situation.
We'll look at that headline shortly. At 6:45, this is a situation with Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, you can get the Standard newspaper delivered right to your doorstep wherever you are across the country. And if you are outside the country, you can get the Standard delivered to your mobile phone or your device by just subscribing to the Standard e-paper. Download the e-paper app from Google Play Store and Apple App Store. If you're in the country and you'd like the hard copy of the Standard newspaper delivered to your doorstep in Nairobi Metropolitan, you can speak to Anthony Mutunga on 0702-905-941. That's 0702-905941 for delivery within the Nairobi Metropolitan region. For delivery within Mount Kenya and the coast, 0702-905780. That's 0702-905780. And within the Rift Valley and Nyanza regions, Mark Odhiambo, 0776-756-107. That's 0776-756-107. 107. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. So let's blame the government for everything that goes wrong in our society, right? Corruption, it's the government. When you call in...
No, I don't think that is a correct statement. Everyone here, everyone must bear their own burden. The government has its burden to bear. The citizenry have their burden to bear.
The front page of The Nation: reckless youth fuel spread of COVID-19. Shame from a Kenya Red Cross ambulance ferrying drunken young people home to weekend house parties and hangouts in Gong Hills, tea farms in Tigoni, Konabaridi, City Park, and the Arboretum. Kenyans are behaving badly. I mean, I'm laughing because I'm so pained. I don't understand. But anyway, let's look at the story itself and what it says.
It's
teens
madness.
pose a new headache to the war on virus as parties go on. Carefree teens and young adults are emerging as one of the weakest links in slowing down the spread of the coronavirus in Kenya as they continue to act irresponsibly. They are still throwing parties and organizing social events. Currently, about 30% of all infections comprise those below the age of 29, while 92% are below 59, bringing a new headache to parents worried about their children. But despite scientists and government officials warning everyone to keep social distance by staying at home, defiant young Kenyans, unbothered and unafraid of the pandemic, are moving social events to their houses, inside cars, parking lots and parks, and other open spaces outside malls and scenic locations. The pushback by youth is now turning into a global crisis. The frontal lobe of the brain is still developing, which means that skills like impulse control, delayed gratification, and realizing the consequences of actions are not fully in place. And this is according to a Harvard health researcher. And this is what he recently wrote.
But also it goes beyond, when you think about youth, many people would think of university or college students, that age group. No, that's not it. It's actually people who are older than that, people in their 30s and 40s.
This thing of pointing fingers at the youth.
We saw a group of MCAs in Nyeri
Didn't we?
arrested. We've also seen videos of MCAs in Nakuru County doing the same thing.
Are they adolescents?
Are they adolescent? No, we've seen Kenya Red Cross admit that one of their senior managers commandeered an ambulance to go and pick Hassan and his friends. This is an adult who actually made the decision. Yes, the youth were drinking, the youth were misbehaving, yes, but a parent played a part in it. So,
Zindu, this is where this one, you're not going to point fingers at the government.
Exactly.
No.
I mean,
There's not government
it's ridiculous.
at all.
Government has nothing to do with the fact. And look, I'm going to blame both sides here. If you just want to look at this specific story of the ambulance issue, all right? young people get together. We don't have to even use the adjective. People get together and they're having a drink. They're too drunk. It goes beyond curfew. Then you pick up the phone and you call your parents. Your parent decides that the best option here is to use a vehicle that will not be asked questions about where they're going after curfew. And so you put your children and their knuckle-headed friends in this ambulance, and then you say, all right, go pick them up, take them home, take them wherever they need to be taken to. Same knuckle-headed young people decide to start take.
The parent here.
That's the same, yeah. So both of them here, they decide to take pictures and then do what? Post them all over social media. This is great. Drunk in an ambulance, past curfew. What are you doing?
Imagine.
What are you doing?
It's
It's cool now, right? It's a cool thing
It's a
because
cool
we're drunk
thing,
in the back of an ambulance. My mother hooked us up. What are you doing? I actually have no problem that they were all taken into mandatory quarantine. I have no problem with that.
You know what is actually tragic? It isn't actually Kenyan. If you look around the world, you now find that with COVID-19, people fall into two categories. Those who are adhering to the norms that have been set out to ensure that people remain safe and alive, keeping social distance, essentially flattening the curve. Then you have the risk takers.
Yep.
People who just do the craziest of things.
The lawbreakers.
Yes, like the crazy people who decided to flood the beaches of Florida. In Spain, people decide that watching a football game isn't bad. Attending a rally isn't a bad thing. I mean, the very opposite of what you're supposed to do. It's not a Kenyan phenomenon. It's a global phenomenon.
It's a global thing.
Terrible thing.
People breaking the law that's why we have lawmakers, and that's why you have law enforcers, and that's why you have lawbreakers. Those words exist for a reason, because it actually does happen. There's a part that everybody plays in this. There's a part that you play in adhering and observing the law. There's also a part that the government plays in ensuring that there is enforcement of that particular law. Now, those people have been taken into mandatory quarantine for 14 days.
I
right?
agree with it 100%.
All of them have been taken into that. However, now that we speak about quarantine, I also have a problem with the way the government is handling quarantine. I still have a problem with it. And with this kind of messaging now, it appears like quarantine is a detention facility.
Quarantine now is punitive.
It's punitive.
Right.
And we should separate those things. We should actually be saying that these people have been taken into detention there for 14 days in which they are going to observe quarantine protocols.
I see where you're going with this, because anybody else, for example, if there's testing that goes on and somebody then or somebody is seen to have symptoms, you run the risk of them now feeling afraid, because if they're taken to the same quarantine where these lawbreakers are being taken into, it seems as though it's a punishment for them. Unfortunately, because they may be exhibiting symptoms, but then they're taken into this same punishment area where other people who broke the rules are, and that's a problem.
You will fear. People will now start running away. Instead of saying, all right, so here I am, I came into contact with so-and-so, and I hear so-and-so has gone into isolation because they tested positive, and here I am, I'd like to go into quarantine. Now people will be running away.
People will not, and people will not disclose their symptoms.
People will not disclose, people will hide, people will switch off their phones in this contact tracing. We've seen people in these quarantine facilities being punished because they apparently, allegedly, broke the set regulations. Now, if you're going to bring in drunk people from Nyeri and their MCAs and bring them to KMTC, and I've been here at KMTC for 14 days, and then they test positive, why are you going to add my quarantine days? This is where now I'm saying it becomes punitive, and they need to separate them.
You know, the gentleman who is the director for National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases in the U.S., a man who's been in the media very often, Dr. Anthony Fauci, when he was before his Congress, this is what he told them, that, you know, people keep talking about the flu. The facts are as follows. The flu has a mortality of 0.1%. That we figured because we've had it for a long time. Said this particular viral attack, this one the rate is 10 times that of the flu. 10 times. So you can say what you like, but the reality is it's virulent. Anything that has the capacity to infect people, the capacity to cause damage tenfold, that is not something you joke with. And somehow, this doesn't seem to have sunk. That this isn't business as usual. That you cannot treat it as though you were treating some funny flu or some cold that comes with the season and the wet season. This thing kills. And the numbers will go up. And we've even had evidence. Every time people have ignored these basics, the numbers shoot up.
They go up.
There was an interesting story over the weekend. Maybe this will help to land this. A gentleman was, in the US, no less, a gentleman was admitted for COVID. And he tested negative after having, been in hospital for a few days. And then he was allowed to go home. He got home and then was readmitted in hospital for something else. So what happened is that COVID then affected his other organs. He died of heart failure after that. So we must understand this is not something that we can play with. You might go in, get treated, and you're fine. You go home. But then the effects on the rest of your system, and look at another organ, it's not even a respiratory organ.
Yep.
His kidneys failed, and then his heart stopped.
But the speed with which these things happen is what should alarm you.
It's
Exactly.
ravaging you
That's
within a
the
very short
problem.
time.
With a
It's
very
not
short
that it
period.
gives you a week's
He
warning.
went He went home. He was cleared to go home. 3 days later, he was back on a ventilator. His heart stopped. He died on Saturday night. So you can imagine.
Researchers are saying that it's affecting your brain, it's affecting your eyes, your nose, your heart and blood vessels, your intestines, your kidneys, your liver.
In
your
short,
lungs.
it affects everything.
It's affecting all your main
Remember,
bodily organs.
one of the things that we've said again on this show is that with any such disease, there are so many things we don't know. And with time, we'll get to know more and more and more and more and more. If you look at even the stories around COVID-19, they've changed with time because more has gotten to be known.
Right.
And more is going to... Remember, there was uncertainty about using ARVs, using a mixture, a concoction of ARVs, antibiotics, malarial medication. There was doubt. Research scientists have to be cautious. You cannot make statements when you're not certain. But right now, if you look at the vaccines that are being spoken of, they have a mixture of all these concoctions. Why? Because they have found that certain mixtures work. But until you can conclusively and definitively say that we know how it works, they will not announce it.
There you go. And this is the danger that was posed with the usage of chloroquine, for example, as a treatment. We now see that research has shown that chloroquine, this is just after the last 2 weeks, that chloroquine actually will not be able to treat COVID.
Yes.
Let's continue this conversation at the beginning of the next hour. CT Muga, as we go to the top of the hour. Today's proverb.
Milk and honey do not have the same color, but they share the same house peacefully.
That's today's proverb. Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock. In the next hour, we'll be talking to the Swiss ambassador to Kenya.
Has anything changed on the roads? No, they're all a little bit slippery today because of the showers being experienced around different parts of Nairobi. Mombasa Road looks a little bit sticky right now with a little bit of traffic right around City Cabanas, but that should open up in just a little bit. It's not really so bad. Looking around other parts of the city, it looks all right. And remember, public areas, you got to put on your masks, folks, to take care of yourself and others as well. Nothing much happening. If anything does pop up, let us know. Twitter, SpiceFMKE.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have CT Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications
It's 2
expert,
minutes after 7. Thank you very much for tuning in to Spice FM in 94.4 Nairobi, 87.9 Mombasa, 102.5 Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, Eldoret 96.7, Nyeri 90.9, Malindi 97.7. Thank you for joining us online, www.spicefm.co.ke and Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. We are live streaming on all those platforms. Now, in the next hour, from about 7:30, we'll be speaking to Dr. Ralph Heckner. He is the Swiss ambassador to Kenya. He's written an opinion piece that's been published in today's Standard on page 16. Bleak times, what we're witnessing is a combination of the beginning of World War I and the Spanish flu. So this man is a historian, right? He's Dr. Heckner. He is a historian. He loves history. He says, in fact, he continued studying history up to PhD in contemporary history. He's taking a look at what we are witnessing now in COVID-19 and saying, mankind, humanity has been here before. And so there's some very many lessons that we can learn from the Spanish flu of 1918 and the World War I 4 years earlier, and what happened to humanity after that, and how we can conquer and emerge out of this stronger. So we'll be speaking to him in about 30 minutes. And then from 8 o'clock, at 8, we'll speak to Clement Tulezi. He's the CEO of the Kenya Flour Council. You know, among the companies, that the industries that have been hard hit by this COVID-19 is our floriculture sector. Hard hit. No exports. It was contributing a lot, making many billions and contributing many billions to the economy. Now, basically being ground to a halt. So we'll be speaking to him to hear what the flour sector is doing. So back to our issue, which is the annoying bit of how Kenyans are behaving with this, and how, we bring in the civil liberties and all those things, and where we see the government urging, and the CS Mutahi all the time saying, fellow Kenyans, please, look, you have a role to play. You have a role to play in ensuring that you adhere to this. We could lose, our projections are showing that we could lose up to 28,000 Kenyans if we don't take care. If we don't take, there's some people who have basically given reactions. It's published in the Standard. Lucas Boyer says it's a pointless statement. Unless you can relate the numbers you give us daily with that 28,000 figure, then you're wrong. What's the government's overall plan or strategy to get Kenya back to normal? What's the final objective and what's the time frame? How can you plan if there's no objective? How will we know whether we are making progress and by what rate? Basically, people are just saying, what we need is the government to do mass testing. We condemn the spirit of fear you're selling to us.
No,
God has been protecting us since the pandemic started. We shall overcome in Jesus' mighty name.
Amen to that. But, you see, it's one thing to call out. It's one thing to make an entire career on shifting blame and pointing fingers at others. You cannot solve a problem by constantly focusing on the government should have done this. That's being prescriptive. Let's pause and say, yes, you are right. The government ought to do that. Maybe they haven't. Maybe they're working on it. But you have a duty as an individual.
Yes. Absolutely.
So are you blaming your derelict nature and your hypocrisy on the government as well? Because the government asks you to do one thing. Instead of doing it, you then claim you're being arrested because the government has not brought us water. Really? So the government carried you and took you to the place you are at to drink.
Yeah.
The government came and collected you in some government vehicle to cross borders that you should not cross. The government came and...
The government told you to congregate at a shopping center.
Yes.
And just stay there.
The government also told you not to wear face masks.
Or even when you wear face masks, now, because you've worn face masks, like Dr. Mwangangi was saying yesterday, people are wearing face masks and assuming, because
I have a face mask.
I'm fine.
I can
Yes.
go wherever
I can do everything else. I don't need to wash my hands now. I don't need to observe social distancing
Nonsense,
now.
yes,
I don't
exactly.
need to...
So the government is the one who has made it possible for you to break the laws that are set in place. It hasn't.
I don't know, because this is the thing. The government is, at the end of the day, let's look at it as a body, right? It's a body that does its job, but made up of individuals. You made up of individuals. Who shackled you at that point? Because I looked at a series of short clips over the weekend and I shook my head in absolute disgust because I didn't understand what was going on. From a woman who had a canister of water outside of her shop, right? That is supposed to be for people to wash their hands coming in and out. And she opened the top of it and she washed her hands inside.
Yes.
And then covered it.
Clip.
Is that the government?
Basically.
Is that the government?
She's washing her hands like in a basin. And that's a bucket that has a tap.
That people will now come and
people
wash.
will come and open the tap and wash their hands in running water. You know you're supposed to be washing your hands with running water. She decided, no. Me, I'm used to washing my hands in a basin.
And I'll go back to the mother of this knuckleheads in the ambulance. She too, or father, whomever it was, it really doesn't matter. Mother, father. You go to the extent, you go to the extent of breaking the rules, breaking the law, and you say, right, I must protect my children. Whom they were with, you do not know. Where their paths crossed, you have no idea.
Bring my son home to me.
Bring my son home.
If
and
it's COVID
further than
positive,
that, let's use an ambulance to whom which nobody will ask any questions.
Yep.
What are you thinking?
Impunity of the highest
order. And this one has nothing to do with government. And people want to start talking about civil liberties, and people want to bring in the issue of rights. And are we encroaching on people's rights? Damned. They be damned at this point. Out the window.
The government has made many blunders. There are many things the government hasn't done. But it's this same government that has given these people the freedom that they're now abusing.
Abusing, because let's call it for what it is. What is it that needs to be done? And I asked this question last week because here we are a week later and we have worse of what we experienced
we're
last
seeing
week.
more.
We're going downhill very, very quickly. What is it that is needed? Do people need to start dropping in the streets like flies, dead, for people to realize that this thing is actually quite serious? We're talking about something that is extremely infectious. And you know what? What may kill you is not COVID itself. It would be other things.
But COVID doesn't actually kill you.
It's other things that come in and kill you.
COVID doesn't kill
people
you. It sets in motion a process.
Right. Do we need to get morbid for people to understand what is actually trying to be curbed? Is that what is required? People will die. Do we need to get morbid for people to understand? Because this is a serious thing. And then to think that you're being extremely intelligent by hiding behind closed doors, you will see that a bar is closed. There was an expose over the weekend. Utawala here, a skip and a jump away from Mombasa Road. People are living as if nothing is going on.
You know, Uganda,
9 p.m.,
Uganda
the streets are open.
Way. The government clamped so hard on the citizenry. Within a week, that nonsense was gone.
And this is where I come in again. Look, there are very many people who are adhering to the regulation.
In fact, the vast majority of people are actually adhering.
Those people are being endangered by people who are
by the few who are not adhering.
And this is the job of the government, to protect those that need to be protected. This is why I keep saying, look, we can't say, we urge you. We saw the CS for Interior the other day saying, look, we're going to tighten the grips. In fact, just
Stop saying you're going to tighten.
Stop saying, just do it.
Drop the hammer.
Yes.
You need to protect us. Those of us who understand these things, those of us who want to live.
And adhering.
We want to live. I want to see 2021. All right? So, I want to be protected. And the only way to be protected, because I'm not going to be patrolling the streets at night and ensuring that people are not getting into ambulances or going into drinking, the person whom I have given that responsibility, by my constitution, I've given that delegated the responsibility to government. Government should do its job.
And also the government is the only institution that actually has the power to enforce this.
Yeah.
They have the means to enforce. Now, if it means taking stern action, so be it. Let's create concentration camps.
Yes. Put these people in there. Go. So you were together, you were drinking.
Okay,
go
there.
You were together, you were drinking. Go. If any of you has COVID-19, just give each other. It's fine.
Deal with yourself.
Whoever survives, come back. Whoever doesn't survive, it's okay. You chose this. You chose this path.
This path of being lenient is what's going to guarantee more people get infected and eventually more people die.
I say, look at Uganda. Call it whatever you want to call it. But you know what? Their cases have remained under 100 for the last month. Why? There are no questions being asked, and people are adhering because whether you want to chalk it up to that they understand the gravity of the situation or they are doing what the government has said, either way, somebody's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
This is a pandemic. It isn't one of these subjects for public debate and public participation. No.
We don't invite your opinion.
Yes.
You don't invite your opinion. You don't invite your opinion.
No.
The facts can be given on what COVID does and what you need to know and what you need to understand. But in terms of can I, should I, no.
But
no.
This is the strange thing. It's because what is available on social media and what is also available within the country, we hear of infections. Not enough people have people whom they've known die from complications of this disease.
Right?
What they don't understand is by the time it gets that point, the number of people who will have died
out of control
will be crazy. And you may be one of those people who will have died.
Yes.
And then you'll have also contributed to the death of other people who did not need to die whatsoever, but will do so because of this negligence.
Innocent people. This mother who brought her son back home is basically endangering herself and the rest of her family.
And
just
the families of those other people who were in that
vehicle. You look at the multiplication effect of this.
Look at how many, at least 7 people were in that ambulance.
Okay.
Right? You don't know whom that person came in contact with. From the organogram that we were given, one person easily comes in contact with 20 people in 24 hours.
Yep.
Right? So you have 7 people. The first point of contact, 140 people. Those 140 people multiply by 3, and this is just in 24 hours. You're not able to trace where they went. You're not able to trace whom they came in contact with, what they touched, what are the chances here? So by the time 24 hours is over, 7 people, the possibility of them coming in contact with 1,500 people is very great. And all you need is one person to be infected. That's all you need.
Yep.
Is that how serious we need to get for people to understand the gravity of this thing?
They still won't get it.
It's not. Eric has a point in that what this hedonistic idea that you must have a good time, that you must be free to do stupidity, this is what has taken center stage in the mind. So the reality of COVID is actually taking second place. COVID, yeah, but people are.
But I'm taking care of myself. I'm washing my hands.
I'm washing my hands, and
I'm even wearing a mask.
Yes, and
inside
I'm wearing
the
gloves.
ambulance.
Now,
the most.
That stupidity is what has taken center stage. Now, just like when you are considered an accessory to theft, handling stolen goods. Remember our laws.
You were not there.
Yes.
You were not there when they were stealing. Exactly.
However, our laws are harsher on that person who handled the stolen good than the person who stole.
Yes.
And you know why this was so? Because they understood, if there's no one to buy this stuff,
if there's no demand,
who are you going to sell it to? So you won't steal. This parent ought to be dealt with very harshly.
Properly.
Really, really harshly, because this is the worst form of example that you can have. Yes, it is the good thing to protect your children. What on earth were they doing out of the house in those crazy places in the first place?
In the very beginning. And this is the thing. We don't understand it. We don't get it.
We just don't get it.
No.
It's it's 7:15. Let's just take a short break. Take a breather. Take a look at the weather. See where it's raining, where the sun is rising. It's a beautiful day. And then we come back to this gloom of what we are currently witnessing. People who are directly and knowingly and willfully infecting others with COVID-19. What should we done? What should we do with them? Good morning. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
Mostly cloudy conditions and foggy conditions in Nairobi right now at 16 degrees. Showers expected very early on, highs of 23 and lows of 15. Taking a look into a cloudy Nakuru this morning at 16 degrees. Thunderstorms expected quite early, highs of 22 and lows of 14. In Nyeri, it's already showering down at 17 degrees. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 22 and lows of 15. In Eldoret, it's cloudy this morning and showers have already begun at 14 degrees, likely to be followed by thunderstorms and highs of 19 and lows of 13. In Kisumu, light rain showers already started at 20 degrees. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 24 and lows of 19. Malindi is cloudy this morning at 26 degrees. Showers in the afternoon with highs of 31 and lows of 26. In Mombasa at 26 degrees, it's cloudy conditions through and through, highs of 29 and lows of 26. Then on to East Africa in Kampala this morning at 19 degrees, cloudy conditions and light rain showers expected early on, highs of 24 and lows of 19. In Dar es Salaam, it's cloudy conditions at 25 degrees. It'll warm up later though with highs of 32 and lows of 24. In Johannesburg this morning, it's clear skies at 10 degrees, highs of 22 and lows of 9. And in Lagos at 27 degrees, it's clear skies right now, partly cloudy conditions to follow with highs of 33 and lows of 26.
Spice up your life.
Of Kenyans who are on a death wish and
mature, intelligent talk every morning.
Mombasa Blackwater is really itching to tell us something about this. Good morning, Blackwater.
How you guys doing up there?
We're
Well,
good.
Good
Thanks.
morning, Blackwater.
Morning. Okay, look, this is just a perspective, okay?
Yeah.
Now, I've been observing out here. When you go into these gated communities, and I'm talking where you have these golf courses and clubhouses and stuff like that, we have them out here. And when you go in here, life is moving on as usual. These people are in the clubhouses having a good time. They're playing golf. You know, people are swimming, having a good time. When you go into the slum areas out here, and I've done the driving, right? And you go out here in the slum areas, people are at home just sitting outside. One, it's too hot. So everybody's really sitting outside their houses in the alleyways and whatnot. These people are supposed to be at work. So now what's the point of you telling people to stay at home and all they're doing is just sitting outside because they live in a one-room house, okay? And then they just have to sit in there. So they can do nothing. Now, in this other situation where you have these guys getting caught up and, you know, going for drinks and stuff like that, then why don't you just quarantine them in the bar? Lock them up in there. They're all together. You don't need to move them. Just lock them up in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And let's see
Just
what
lock
happens.
them up in there. Where you found them, just lock them up in there. Let them stay there for 14
Lock them
days.
in there, right there for 14 days. You're quarantined, letting them do what they're doing in there. You see how it works?
Yep, that's a good point.
You know, that's just a simple perspective. That's all.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you, Blackwater.
All right, guys.
Yep. Well, yeah, one way of just ensuring, just keep them there.
This is the thing.
You don't need to transfer them and, you know, start incurring extra costs. So you guys, you're in this house, eh?
You know,
Don't come out of this
there's
house.
something that I
Lock the
think-
house from outside.
There's something that is missed here. There are all these do-gooders and people who believe that they understand and they stand for public rights. When you elect people to make decisions for you and they make decisions, that's democracy.
Yep.
Yes.
You
they're
made the
not they're
choice.
not being draconian. If they say there's a curfew, they've made a decision on your behalf because they've understood what's happening. If they then say you'll be quarantined, they're not being dictatorial. They are actually looking after your welfare. That's what you elected them to do. We didn't elect them to be indecisive. We elected them to be decisive. If it makes you a little uncomfortable, given the circumstances that we're in, even if this cure seems a little harsh, even harsher than the disease, being quarantined won't kill you. It'll keep you alive.
You'd rather be a little bit uncomfortable than
Yes.
dead.
If you are left to your own devices, then you will certainly be dead.
But I'd like us, I still want to come back. When you use that word quarantine, I'd like us to separate those two. Let's create detention centers for people who flout the regulations. And let's have quarantine facilities for people who need to
Test.
be taken into quarantine.
People who test positive
Yes.
and need
And
to
others
be-
who have come into
to be
contact with
treated.
people who have tested positive, right? So people need to be taken into quarantine, take them to quarantine. People who need to be detained, those who flout these regulations, take them to detention facilities. So it's clear this is punishment. This is, we are taking you through the process of, if you test negative, you go back home. If you test positive, you go into the isolation facility where you start getting the treatment for that. We make it very, very clear. We are stigmatizing the quarantine facilities.
Unfortunately, now quarantine is becoming a punitive measure. I mean, because we've seen it now. I mean, what did CAS and Mercy Mwangangi say is that anybody, even it doesn't matter, you will be taken to quarantine.
Yep.
We've had, the police say if you're found outside during curfew, it's quarantine.
Go to KMT.
Regardless of where you're coming from, whatever you're doing, it's quarantine. So it is a punitive measure now, as opposed to a preventative measure now. Unfortunately, this is what it appears to be. And like we said, we run the risk of then people not presenting themselves.
Yep.
They would be afraid because it seems like jail for 14 days. I would have done something wrong. And unfortunately, that's what is going to happen. Even without this edict, we have people feeling this way already, saying that, you know what, I have a symptom or two, but I'm not going to take myself there because, number one, I don't have the money to pay. Number two, I'm going to be away from my family, this, that, the other thing. And now we do this, we introduce that measure.
And we want to come up with a way of also saying, if a family member has tested positive, why do you need to remove the other family members from the house?
From the house.
To take them to a facility, to a hotel?
Why?
Quarantine them in the house.
In the house.
Yes.
And say,
now you're telling them, go on in car.
Costs.
Cost.
Meanwhile, you could be at home.
And all they've done is come into contact with one family member who has tested positive. Let's go to Nyeri. Dennis is calling in from Nyeri. Good morning, Dennis.
Yeah. How you doing, guys?
Good morning.
Fine,
thank you.
Yeah. There's something I just wanted to say here. Majority of us, the society has already condemned us. We don't have works. We don't have jobs. You go to look for a job, you ask for experience for 5 years or something like that. Actually, it's like we've already lost hope. All right? You can all talk about the debate you are doing, but the real thing is this: it's like we really don't really care. Even if you see us doing the party things and something like that, majority of us, we really don't have hope.
Are you saying that the reason why a lot of people are out partying and drinking, flouting these regulations, is because of the fact that there is no work? Is that the reason?
To some extent, yes.
And you're also saying that you actually don't care. Is that also true?
Yeah, to some extent, yes. We really don't. We've lost hope, actually.
What have you lost hope in?
As in, already the society condemn us. As in, we don't have work. We've got nothing to contribute. I do a small business. After I've paid everything, I've just done like 300 profit. But then again, the little that I get is the one what we're going to use.
I hear what you're saying, and
Yes.
it's a situation that actually has required attention for a long time in the country. But do you feel that giving up is a solution?
Already society has already pushed us there.
And you're saying you don't have a say in this matter at all. It's the society that decides for you.
Basically, like, there's nothing we are contributing, so there's nothing to lose.
If you have a small business and you're doing it, it means there are people you're doing business with. Even if you said you're making 100 shillings, it isn't as though you do the business and nothing comes out of it. Let me ask the question. What were your expectations? Because what we seem to be discussing here is a lack of fulfillment or a lack of achievement of expectations that you had. What had you expected?
Someone who has already lost hope, they've got nothing to expect.
That we're having this discussion tells me that you still have hope. What had you expected?
As in,
what had you
how
expected
now?
to see with your life? If, like, in this business of yours, what had you hoped to see?
the hopes are already gone.
The hopes are already gone.
You've already gone.
If the hope had already gone completely, absolutely, so we wouldn't really have had this discussion, would we?
Actually, that's the reason why I listen to your show very, very much, because we are trying to look for hope.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Anyway,
if there's anything you feel we can help in contributing to sort of uplifting your spirit and your hope, tell us. Mm-hmm. Let us talk about it. That's what we're here for.
Listening to your show alone, at least it assists. Yeah, even if when we are going to drink, we talk about something, we get something to argue about. Yeah. I mean, to debate about, yes.
Yeah. Dennis, I think at the same time, you also owe it to yourself and those that love you. You know, there's something, we spoke to the Mombasa governor a couple of weeks back.
Yes.
You heard that conversation. He said, if not for the fact that you love yourself, if you don't love yourself, if you don't love others, there are those that love you, all right? And for the sake of those that love you, at least take some measures to try and protect yourself.
Those that loves you, they already lost hope also in you. There's nothing you're contributing.
No, they haven't lost hope. They haven't.
You know, being disappointed isn't losing hope. Disappointment is something we all go through. I'm disappointed today, tomorrow even. But then I figure, well, let me see what can happen. The let me see spirit is a good spirit, and you already have it.
You have it. By virtue of the fact that you picked up the phone, by virtue of the fact that you say, okay, there's something to breathe about tomorrow, there's the hope. Yeah. But you see, unfortunately, I think now this translates into a lot of people doing things that at this point in time, the world, the government, your family, again, like Eric said, those who love you are asking you at this point to be responsible at this. This is what the message that is going around to everybody. To be responsible at the things that we are being asked to do them so that we can protect life. So that people's lives can be protected.
I get you. You see, actually, it's to some larger extent. It's not like I'm talking for myself. Yeah, I'm talking for a bigger majority of those guys who we usually meet here.
Speaking for a friend.
Of course, even me, I'm also there, but for bigger majority.
Dennis, we thank you very much for calling in this morning.
Okay, thank you.
Keep hope alive, all right?
I will do that.
Thank you. Solomon in Kisumu, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good morning.
Yes, actually, just want to contribute a little.
Mm-hmm.
The issue of putting people in contact into forced quarantine.
Yep.
It doesn't add up because it is making us to fear. For example, I come from a very remote area in a place called Nyeri. Now, if I get in contact with somebody, probably let's say he was here with us probably for a meal.
Solomon, your line is not clear. Let's try having you again on air shortly after this.
Okay.
Yeah. Your line is not clear, Solomon, but I think you have an interesting story that you are telling. It's 7:30. Let's take a look at traffic, and then the conversation continues. And remember, shortly we'll be speaking to the Swiss ambassador to Kenya, Dr. Heckner. Good morning.
Anything changed? Not looking much different now, folks. On most of the major roads today, traffic is A-OK, moving along quite smoothly. We'll let you know of any hiccups, but for now it looks really good, especially for Monday morning. Taking all things into consideration, you should have no trouble with traffic today at all.
Traffic.
station, the Situation Room, right here on Spice FM Nairobi, broadcasting to Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, and Malindi. Well, it was an interesting thing what Dennis is saying from Nyeri, and he's saying, look, I'm not just speaking for myself, I'm speaking for others. We'll discuss that in a short while. You have dealt with such situations, C.T. Muga.
I have.
You have, right? And you'll give us that perspective of when people come to you and they tell you, look, it doesn't really matter. I live, die, it's all the same.
Liwe liwalo.
Liwe liwalo. Kama mbaya. It doesn't really matter. So shortly, we'll be speaking to Dr. Ralph Heckner. He is a Swiss ambassador to Kenya. Like I was saying, he has written an article that has been published on the Standard this morning. Basically, this man is giving a historical perspective on COVID-19 pandemic. He's even taking it personal. He's saying, look, in World War I and then the Spanish flu of 1918, my family was right there in the thick of things. And my great-grandfather was, living in Cologne, and this is they went through, and it's given that very good perspective. But then also he comes and says, I'm looking back, I've been reading at what has happened with various pandemics in the past, and I'm seeing there's so many parallels that we can draw here with that. And now let's hear exactly what those kind of parallels are. Good morning, Dr. Heckner.
Good morning. It's great to be with the Situation Room and Spice FM again. Thank you for having me on your show.
Good morning, Dr. Heckner.
How are you doing?
Very, very
We are
well.
very well.
We are very well, thank you. And thank you very much for being with us again today.
Yeah, it's good to hear your voices and good to hear that you're all doing fine. I hope your loved ones are doing fine as well.
Yes, for sure.
are.
And we
Thank
wish
you.
you the same as well.
Thank you. Yeah, we are fine.
Good.
We are fine.
Good.
Thank you.
Now, Doctor, you've written a very interesting perspective here on that's been published in the Standard. Doing what you love to do, which is looking at things from a historical perspective. Now, for those that haven't read this article yet, and they'll be reading it later when they get to buy a copy of the newspaper, just give us a brief of what is it that you're talking about.
Well, as you said, I was a student of history, and I like to try to make sense of what is happening in today's world through a historical perspective. So I put on my glasses as a historian on my nose and try to have a kind of frame of reference of what is going on today. So I was digging into the history of my family from Germany, Cologne, and I was reading books about Cologne in the First World War. And I found incredible parallels of what my great-grandfather in Cologne went through and what we all are going through today in Kenya and all over the world. And I found that what we are living through is a combination of the beginning of World War I, and that was in 1914, combined with the Spanish flu that ravaged the world in 1918. So that is an incredible combination, and I could expand a little bit on that if you want.
Yes.
Good. Go ahead.
In 1914, we had an incredibly connected world. The level of globalization in 1914 was the same as in the mid of the 1980s. So it was an incredibly interconnected world, and that world came to a standstill with the beginning of World War I. All existing functional commercial and people-to-people ties were demolished. And for Cologne, for example, that meant you couldn't import meat and pigs from the Netherlands, a country that was only 80 kilometers from Cologne away. The whole tourism collapsed. Cologne had always been a tourism place because of the fact that Cologne has one of the most important Catholic cathedrals in Europe. The whole economy collapsed, the domestic economy, because all men went to war. So that's what happened within hours and days, as it happened to us during that coronavirus crisis. And further on, what you saw was that the administrations had to readjust, businesses had to readjust. You needed to come up with an administration that was now catering for the basic needs of the people in a city, because food was lacking, and security was an issue too, because you had so many soldiers in the city. And businesses had to readjust too. They were then suddenly producing ammunition, and what you see today is very much the same. You have Kenyan businesses that are now producing masks instead of cloths.
Yep. So basically, it's basically showing that there's this. It brings in some positive side to it as well. For a country, you start looking inwardly, and you start seeing that there are many opportunities for you to hop onto.
Yes, I mean, once we are through this crisis, I think we can be positive.
Yep.
There is also a lesson that I learned by studying the history of my family, which went through 2 world wars and at least 3 financial depreciations in the 20th century. And if I have a look at the time after World War I and after the Spanish flu, you had an incredible economic boom time, the so-called golden 20s.
Yes.
It was not only economically, but also when you having a look at music and culture and fashion. It was an incredible time to live. So there is, as you say in English, after rain there is often a rainbow, and after the World War and the Spanish flu, you had a good and amazing economic uptake. And today I think we are already seeing not yet an economic update. This has to wait for quite some time. But what I see is it is amazing that the whole global scientific community is now searching for one thing together. And that is a vaccine against the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And I cannot think of any other moment in the world's history where the whole scientific community was researching the same thing. And I also see more solidarity. You know, at the beginning we all were looking after ourselves. Now you have French hospitals that are helping out Swiss hospitals and vice versa. And I even received yesterday a communication from the foreign ministry about masks being produced in Kenya. Is there a need in Europe? So there is now a wave, I would say, of solidarity also here in Kenya with that fund that was opened by the Kenyan business community.
Right. Dr. Heckner, if we look at, just again, going towards those historical perspectives, if that looking at between 1914 and 1918, a lot of the processes are documented, but a lot of the feeling and the mindset of people, unfortunately, is not. If we look at what we are facing now and what people are feeling, maybe their rights being abused by things that they're being asked of, can we draw parallels between the same in terms of what ruling? Because if you look at the Spanish flu, just like you talked about, around that time, people were asked to stay at home, businesses were shut down, kinds of things also put in place to make sure that it was mitigated. Can we then draw any kind of parallels between then the effect that it had then and what it would have now in terms of curbing COVID and when it comes to things like people's rights and civil liberties?
I mean, what happened between 1914 and 18, and especially at the beginning of the war, and also with the flu, was a clear setback when it comes to the democratic functioning of state. I cannot think of a moment after World War II when the Federal Council, the Swiss government, was ruling based on emergency law. So Switzerland is now ruled by emergency law by the government. And the Federal Council has the clear objective that this period of emergency law and governing and administrating based on it is as short as possible. So what is true for Switzerland is true for so many countries. Freedom of movement is being curtailed. You cannot move as you want in a lot of countries. Right. I have a family in Italy. They have been in a lockdown now for 6 weeks. So important here is, yes, a lot of things have changed radically, and we are finding ourselves in a totally new world. But when it comes to the rule of law and the democratic procedures and the freedoms that we have, they have to be first and foremost respected as much as possible already now. And where they have been curtailed based on emergency law, they have that period has to be as short as possible. So that is a very valid point you raised. One of the most important questions, I think, beyond fighting the coronavirus is to maintain our democratic institutions, and especially by abiding to the human rights and by managing the crisis intelligently and successfully to strengthen our democratic institutions.
Dr. Heckner, history does a very good job of documenting what has happened and even in analyzing it, but in so doing, does it actually tell us how well we learn from these past issues?
That is a very good question. First and foremost, history is not repeating itself exactly. So in that respect, learning is good, but it doesn't mean that you can apply it one-to-one. As I said, I think we learned from history because if I compare how the world is reacting now to that pandemic and how little the pandemic and the Spanish flu were understood in 1918, I think a lot has been done when it comes to fighting pandemics. Learning means, I think, that we learn from catastrophes. And after World War I, there was that idea from the U.S. President Woodrow Wilson to establish the League of Nations, so that nations would come together peacefully. That was a failure, and we had World War II. And after World War II, you had the creation of the United Nations, and that was a successful establishment. You had the World Bank, you had the IMF, all institutions that are now working to fight the economic, political crisis and also the pandemic. So what I think is, after this huge crisis, and what we are going through, as I said, is the beginning of World War I and the Spanish flu combined, we have to come up with new institutions to cope with crises like this, and also to have a consensus on what kind of institutions we need. And I think what we need are institutions and a consensus that are looking after the poor. We need inclusivity. With this crisis, we see whether you are poor or rich, you can be hit by the virus equally. It is an equalizer. So that is my first point. Look after the poor and go for inclusivity. And my second point is, we have to look after our planet urgently. If this is a crisis, the pandemic, an environmental meltdown will be thousands and thousands 1,000 times bigger. So there is a huge urgency to look after the planet. And for that, we need a consensus, how to do that. And we also might to come up with new institutions. And if we do that, I think then the biggest lesson that we can learn now is to look after the poor and to look after our planet. And with that, give a new perspective and a positive future to our children and to this planet.
Right. There are those that have said there are some institutions that we have presently that will either be rejigged or have to be rejigged or just done away with altogether. We've seen an onslaught now starting in the World Health Organization and the World Health Organization's management of this particular pandemic. Do you see some of these institutions surviving, or do you see them getting a new face?
After this crisis, we all have to have a very clear and thorough look at what happened globally and in each and every country, and how each and every country and institution, national and global institution, reacted. And we have to be courageous in doing this and very transparent.
Yeah.
And based on that, we will see who acted responsibly and who acted irresponsibly.
Yeah.
And based on that, we can then reform institutions, reform processes and structures, or maybe just to come up with a new one. And we will also see which countries have been transparent, forwardcoming, in solidarity, and which ones are not. And that those countries might be the countries that come up with the best ideas, and the world population will follow those ideas because they are based on a track record of a country, all of businessmen and women.
Dr. Egner, you've given a very interesting analogy of, and it's a reality that for the first time, let's say the world scientific bodies are actually working in tandem. I want you to consider this perspective, that it is more in search of self-preservation rather than in the preservation of the planet, because COVID-19 is affecting each and everyone on this earth. It isn't the first viral attack we've had. We had HIV, we had Ebola. We didn't see this coming together, not on this scale. So I am asking you to consider this perspective. This getting together, this huge confluence of scientific minds, is because each and every of those scientific minds represents a part of the world that is directly threatened by COVID-19.
Yes, you're absolutely right. This is out of self-preservation, but nevertheless, they are all working together. And the other point is, what are the peoples of this world asking for? They're now asking from the scientific community and businesses and governments and universities to come up with a vaccine. And afterwards, they will ask for a good environment, jobs, healthcare. And so there's an incredible voice out there. And you have to hear that voice also for self-preservation, because otherwise nations and people will fail. But there's a whole self-preservation out there, meaning we all want to see this planet survive and to see mankind survive on that planet too. So self-preservation, yes, but at the end of the day, I think it is survival in a positive way of all of us that is at stake and that we are aiming for together.
I want to go back to something I raised earlier about lessons learned, and I am thinking this. Before COVID-19, we had other coronaviruses that had visited the planet and had also caused a decent amount of harm. What seems to have come to the fore is it's generally called a lack of preparedness. But I don't think this is entirely true. I think it's more a lack of preparedness for an onslaught of communicable diseases. What is your take?
Did I understand your question correctly, that you see a lack of preparedness when it comes to pandemics?
Yes, there's a lack of preparedness, because if you're talking about non-communicable diseases, you're talking about heart diseases, you're talking about diabetes, many places in the West are very well equipped and very well prepared to deal with these diseases. But when you're talking about pandemics, if you're talking about communicable diseases, then the preparedness was inadequate worldwide.
Yeah, I agree with you. And this will be one lesson that we all learn. The lack of preparedness for such a kind of pandemic. I can tell you, in the drawers of the Swiss administrations, there were huge books with the title on it, Pandemics. I had them in my hand when I was head of crisis management. The World Health Organization has a pandemic document and procedures. I think they're all dating back to 2005. So what I see here is not only a lack of preparedness, meaning that what was written in the document was also there in reality. So if you say we have so many ICU units, you should have so many ICU units and they should be functioning. You should have the staff for it. So that is the lack of preparedness. Not what was on paper, but what we see in reality. There was a lack of preparedness to be, I think, transparent and quick all over the world when it comes to deal with this crisis. And last but not least, universal health care is maybe the most important thing to deal with such a pandemic, meaning that every human being on this planet has a certain health care level which can take care of something like a pandemic. So what President Kenyatta put on his Big Four agenda, universal health care, was spot on.
Yeah.
And 4 years ago, we had a conference of ambassadors from the African continent in Switzerland. And we came up with one thing, what was needed when it comes to our engagement in Africa, and that was healthcare. We were spot on there too. So now what we have to do is we have to deliver on universal healthcare all over the planet.
Is it? I mean, if we look at the planet now, it really doesn't matter who we see. There are quite a number from what we call the developed world, underdeveloped, developing world. Everybody's health system seems to be suffering from the cracks. Do you think that after this, we will see where there will be a deliberate effort made then to make sure that the health system at least is top notch and delivering to its people what is required?
Yes, but we don't need a top notch healthcare system. We need a good healthcare system that can cater to the basic needs of all people on this planet. That's what we need. We don't need the best heart surgeons in every single country and in every single hospital on this planet. But we need a decent, capable healthcare system that can cater for the basic needs of the people. And the pandemic, this is a basic need.
It sorts out the problem. Dr. Ralph Heckner, we want to thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.
Well, I thank you. You told me 10 minutes. I think we're a little bit long.
Just a little bit.
The discussion had quite a life of its own.
Yes,
Don't blame us. Blame you. Thank you, and keep sharing your gems of wisdom on this.
I wish you you well, and I wish all the listeners well in this difficult times.
Thank you
for
so
having
much.
me with you.
Thank you very much.
Asante sana. Have a good day as well.
Same to you. Bye.
Dr. Ralph Heckner is a Swiss ambassador to Kenya. He is a historian, and he started by telling us he likes to put on his glasses on his nose, the historian glasses on his nose, and look back at events that have shaped the world from a historical perspective. Very good perspective there.
I would agree.
Very, very good perspective. And looking at what lessons we can draw from what has happened in the past.
You see, there's a debate that's raging very, very furiously in the U.S., and it's arising from what some view was a criticism by one Bill Gates on how the government of the U.S. has been managing the matters surrounding COVID. Now, it hasn't gone full circle, but it is blooming and blossoming. And now, all the conspiracy theorists are out in full gear. And one of the things that is being leveled against Bill Gates is that he invented COVID-19.
He wants to benefit.
He wants to benefit from it.
He's playing a long game here. He's in business.
Yes, and that discussion is raging. And they forget that in 2016, Bill Gates warned of this.
He spoke about it. In fact, that's what they're using as,
that's what they're twisting.
How did he know is what they're saying.
Was he working on something? Was he basically just telling us to prepare ourselves for something that's coming?
Actually, anyone who is a historian like Dr. Heckner would have told you, and Bill Gates understood what he was talking about.
Yeah, he just looked at history and he saw this is going to come.
This way we're going, yes.
It's coming up to 8 o'clock CT. Today's proverb.
Milk and honey don't have the same color, but they share the same house peacefully.
That's in Israel, right?
No,
in the land of milk and honey.
Any country on this earth can be a land of milk and honey. That is, of course, if you consider milk and honey to be a panacea for many things.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Building up on Mombasa is right around Cabanas today. Right now, though, it is at a standstill. It should open up the few who are getting out to work this morning. We'll probably see it then clog up again in the evening, but for now it looks like it'll open up really quickly, and that's just on Mombasa Road. Coming off Thika Road looks splendid heading into the city centre, and off Mombasa Road, off Ngong Road and off Langata Road, not much issues today. Unless something out of the ordinary does happen, let us know. Spice of MKE, reach us on Twitter, let us know what you see, but for now guys, it looks really good.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer.
A whole different breed of people. There are those that have even gone round talking about 5G, and 5G has contributed to the spread of COVID-19. Yeah. It's forced the Communications Authority to issue a statement, and in fact it's even being published in the newspapers, with the acting DG of the Communications Authority saying, look, forget everything else you're hearing. There's absolutely no way the 5G technology could have contributed to either the creation or the spread of COVID-19. Absolutely no way. So in this hour, we're going to be talking about the effect of COVID-19 on the other key aspects of the economy. As people everywhere cancel events and big cut flower orders, The ripples reach into the Dutch auction halls and the Kenyan rose fields. Before the pandemic, 42 of the cargo flights that were arriving in the Netherlands each week were coming from Kenya, whose climate allows roses to grow and glow year round.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, the Kenya ships about $1 billion worth of flowers each year, making it Europe's biggest supplier. Now, that has had a huge effect. Now, of course, the closure of the auction and the closure of also flights and exports has had a huge effect on our Kenyan flower sector. The Kenyan flower industry took a hit immediately. They had to readjust, send some workers home. Some workers are still working because you have to maintain this huge investment of a flower farm. You've got to maintain some flowers. The crop itself has to keep growing. So you've got to maintain some workers. You have flowers that you're harvesting on a daily basis. Where are you taking them? They came up with a plan also with KEPSA to distribute some of these flowers to our healthcare workers in hospitals and taking them to the patients in hospitals, just to ensure that, these flowers find a place to go.
Right.
So we are going to be talking shortly with the CEO of the Kenya Flower Council. He's Clement Tulezi. Kenya Flower Council is the body that represents the flower sector. Does a lot of work for them, advocacy, self-regulation, trying marketing, and also branding of Kenyan flowers. And he would understand what's happening from the global perspective, right, to the Kenyan flower sector. Good morning, Clement.
Good morning, Eric.
Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you too. Yeah, it's a good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Can we call it a rosy morning?
We are always optimistic.
Or should we call it a thorny morning?
Yeah, despite the circumstances, we are always optimistic that it shall be well.
Hold optimism there. That's a good point to start. Now, Clement, the floriculture sector in Kenya was hard hit from the very beginning. Just give us a picture of how things are right now.
Yeah, as most of you know, is that our biggest market as Kenya is Europe. Of course, we still export to other countries. In total, we do over 70 countries across the world. But Europe accounts about 70% of our export. So anything happening in Europe has a definite and immediate impact on our industry back home. So what happened is that immediately we started seeing the numbers of infections going up in the larger Europe. That meant that we were going to be affected immediately because the priority for Europe was basically on people looking at their own safety in terms of health and food, and flowers became sort of a luxury. So beginning the first week of March, we were thoroughly hit, where we dropped up to about 20% of our sales. And we have stayed there for about 1 month. But now we are seeing the demand starting to come up again, and we're optimistic that the industry can be revived going forward.
So where is the demand coming from?
The demand basically is that what is happening in Europe is that as people continue to battle the virus, they are also realizing that we have to keep the business going, but also flowers is one way in which people wish others well, and therefore they are now putting back the flowers onto the shelves, and people are willing to come in and buy and really support. This is a new angle to it, because initially it was just like, okay, we are only concerned about our health and food. But now we are seeing them thinking differently, and this is good for us. I think the challenge at the moment is, can we get all the produce that we need into the market from here, ferrying it straight into the market? That is the biggest challenge we have at the moment.
And the challenge is in terms of what? Transports? Or in terms of power themselves capacity?
No, I think the capacity is there. As you know, when we were down, we decided to send some workers on leave. A lot of them are still on leave as we speak. But the capacity is there, so we can recall them and the operations can go on as normal. The problem is how we ferry the flowers from Nairobi to all our destination markets. We lost a big chunk of our cargo supply because we were doing quite a number on the passenger flights, so they were all grounded. We are relying only on cargo. A lot, when we lost demand in our major markets, a lot of freighters relocated to other routes. But also we stopped shipping quite a number, and therefore that meant that for the cargo flights, we did not have demand here, and therefore they moved away. So getting back the cargo flight back into Nairobi is a big issue. At the moment, we are dealing with about a third of what we need. On a normal day, we were shipping from Kenya exports worth about 5,000 tons. At the moment, we are at about 1,300 tons. And so that tells you where we are. In terms of demand, the demand is about 3,500. And therefore, we can say that we are short every week by about 2,000 tons.
We've heard of airlines, of African operators now converting their passenger flights into cargo, so that they are able to ship some of this produce from Kenya into those markets. Is that helping?
It is in a small way. You have seen that out of the negotiations that we had with Kenya Airways, you have seen last week we had a flight from Nairobi to London, but basically there was a lot of misreporting. There were no flowers on the flight. It was basically veg and vegetables and herbs, no flowers, because flowers are a bit fluffy, they're not dense, and therefore they occupy a bigger space. We cannot load them in a converted passenger flight, as you saw those photos or video. That basically was vegetables and herbs. So generally on the horticulture side, yes, we can say that that flight added something, but for the flowers, basically there was nothing for us. Now, there are other rules, of course, that determine who can fly where, picking what, even within the region. And this, I think, the government is working on between the airlines to see those freedoms and how they can be managed, so that different African airlines can fly from one destination to another, picking produce to the market. We will see how that goes, because we are having a lot of discussions with the airlines, with the freight forwarders, with government and other stakeholders. We will see in a couple of weeks, maybe 1 or 2 weeks, where these discussions head. So we haven't seen much. It's a decision in the right direction, having discussions around these and seeing 1 or 2 flights coming in. We are also having, as associations across the region, we are having discussions to see what possibilities are to use the regional airlines across the different countries. So there is a lot that is being discussed in the background. We'll see in the next 2 weeks what happens. That is a good sign going forward.
Is it possible that if these passenger planes that we have were converted to carry cargo, would it help?
It will help, yes, but you know that in terms of capacity, they are limited. If we have a cargo flight, you say for example, you have a 777 doing cargo, you can do up to 100 to 120 tons per flight. But for the cargo flights, say you have 787, the max you can do is 40 tons. So it's injecting in something, but it's quite small. And as I said, we need about 2,000 tons at the moment. So we need quite a number of flights. If we were to convert passengers into cargo flights, we really need a lot of that.
Let me ask you a direct question. If we converted all our passenger planes into cargo planes...
Basically, you're asking if we removed the seats.
Yes.
Because without removing the seats, what I hear you saying is that without removing the seats, you still cannot load flowers on those seats because of the nature of the flight.
Yeah, that is true. A lot of African airlines are configured around passengers, and they are looking at post-COVID what will happen. So they are not reconfiguring to be able to accommodate the cargo. So they are just looking at using them in the meantime to do cargo. But when the situation stabilizes, they will go back to their usual business, which is basically ferrying passengers.
Okay.
But if that also have to happen, you know that we need refrigerated conditions for us to be able to move a lot of this produce in the cabin. So there is a lot of reconfiguration that needs to be done if that were to happen, and it's a huge cost.
I hear you, and it's kind of a wait-and-see stance that a lot of companies are taking now. Now, if you look at the flower sector also, in this wait-and-see stance. However, the production of this commodity, or this service, is something that cannot be put on hold. I mean, if you're looking at the practicality of it, these are flowers. They're growing. They need to be tended. They need to continue. What measures are being put in place, or what are you going to do with those that mature and grow and then need to be cut? What happens when the numbers have drastically reduced in terms of what you're putting out there for export locally? I mean, what practical solutions have been put in place apart from, sending them to medical facilities and such locally?
It's unfortunate that we are in this situation. The flower industry is a major industry in this country. In terms of commodity, I think we are number 2 in terms of bringing in the foreign exchange.
After tourism.
So we are a major industry. We employ over 150,000 people directly. Close to 1 million people depend on this industry, providing goods and services. And by and large, we say we support about 4 million Kenyans in terms of livelihood. So we are a major industry in this country. So we should not lose sight of the bigger picture when we look at the smaller side of things. So that's the reason why we are talking to government and everyone else, that let's look at the bigger picture. If there's industry collapses, what is likely to happen? It will be catastrophic by the numbers I'm talking about. It will be quite a very unfortunate thing. So we have continued to maintain the farms and the crop as much as possible because we have to remain optimistic that when things start looking up, we should be ready to ferry these products to the market, to our different markets as quickly as possible. So at the moment, we are remaining with what I will call a skeleton staff who continue to maintain the crop. We have to water it, we have to put fertilizer in because this crop needs to demonstrate every day that it's quality, because we are not alone in this sphere. We are competing with other countries. So we need to maintain Kenya as the most credible place to source quality flowers. So we have continued to maintain that. So we have workers that are on the farms. We may not be generating much at the moment, but we have workers who have to continue with the basic operations to maintain this crop as much as possible. A lot of the workers, especially seasonal, we had to part ways with them. There are not many, but we had to part ways. We have tried to maintain the workers on leave as much as possible so that we are not laying them off. These are people we work with. They are highly qualified, and we believe that at some point when the situation stabilizes, then we'll have them back.
Right.
Maybe 1 or 2 or 3 farms may decide that a small percentage of their workers may be put on redundancies if this continues, but we're optimistic that we can turn these around. So it's a really wait and see. Unfortunately, we have only to do what we can do. I wish that someone could step in and be able to help us, especially with the freight. The question we have right now is that if someone comes in and we're able to fix the freight, then we can start seeing some glimpse of hope going forward. We have orders that we need to service. We are asking our development partners and including government, is there ways that you can step in to demonstrate that there is business here. There is business in Nairobi. The cost of freight has gone up 2 to 3 times what we were paying before.
Wow.
Initially, we would pay, in the range, say, of about 1.5 to $2.5. We're talking of prices of over $4 to maybe up to $8 per kilo. That is quite high. It doesn't make a business sense for us. So if someone stepped in and took about a bit of the cost, then the exporters can be able to continue exporting, and we can start attracting more freighters into Nairobi. these are a lot of discussion. There are a lot of discussions going in behind the scenes. We hope we'll have a solution very soon.
Am I right in hearing you say that even if Kenya Airways converted all, and I mean all its planes, they would not be able to accommodate what needs to be freighted?
Yes, the answer is yes, because at the moment, what is available from Kenya Airways probably can only offer us up to, say, 600 tons.
Yeah.
It could be something, but it's still short of what we
short of the 3,500
yes,
shortfall
we need a lot. We really need a lot. So we need to demonstrate to other airlines that were ferrying from here that there is business in Nairobi. We were operating with about 12, 15 freighters in Nairobi, doing over 40 or 50 flights into Europe. We need this to be restored as quickly as possible if we have to survive as an industry.
I want to just ask one last question, that is from me. Is there any other business that the flower industry are involved in? Maybe the hospitality industry, maybe the supply of water. Is there anything else that you do other than produce flowers?
We are a very complex industry. If you go to a typical farm, you realize that all those services you're talking about, we provide it to the community we work with. You will find farms with schools, hospitals, water projects, energy projects. So it's a very complex industry. Of course, our mainstream remains flower production, but though we have a lot of auxiliary services and goods that we produce right from there, because we have a huge community, not just of workers, but people who depend on what we do around the communities we work with. So it's really complicated. All those services and goods you're talking about are areas that we are involved in. We are complex because we manage almost the entire supply chain, unlike other products where very many people manage supply chain. We manage quite a huge chunk of that supply chain, and therefore we have to make sure that we provide those services to our workers and also the communities where we work.
Which of these services generate income to the flower farms?
A lot of what we provide is part of our CSR. You will find that a few places, community or workers are putting money, but it's highly subsidized, really, really subsidized, because it's just part of appreciation that we work with people who have needs, and we have a responsibility of meeting those needs. So even when they have to pay, it's highly subsidized. So they're not really profit making because we want to concentrate on our main activity, which is basically production and selling of cut flowers. We don't want to venture into other areas that we think other people have maybe better expertise or are generating profits from. It's always good for you to be specialized. So as much as we continue providing this service, it's more on the CSR, much more than making profit from.
What I hear you saying, Clement, is that you require a lot of support from government, not necessarily just monetary, even lobbying support to lobby other governments or the freighters to come back.
Exactly. I think these discussions needs to be approached from within Kenya, just looking at the working between the different ministries and departments of government, and they need to be scaled up to the regional level and then internationally, because this is an international trade that is highly linked elsewhere. So the decisions that you make here have huge ramifications elsewhere. So they need to be dealt with at different levels. We believe that if government came in to engage with their counterparts elsewhere within the region and internationally, and also look at other organizations that are involved in flower trade, we can be able to come up with solutions that we think are practical and can be able to help us remain afloat even within the crisis that we are going through.
And at the same time, it sounds like there's a sense of urgency from your side on what needs to be done. Are you feeling like the government is taking it up with the same sense of urgency?
We have survived as an industry because we export every day, we grow and export every day. We are dealing with a perishable commodity. in the industry where I work, even 5 minutes is a long time. And you can see that when you go to a typical flower farm. In terms of processes, they are timed even minute by minute, because anytime there is a delay on this crop, it's deteriorating immediately. So it's really, really urgent that something is done quickly. I'm having hundreds of calls from producers and the exporters of cut flowers asking, do you have a solution? So even as we wake up today, these are the things I will be dealing with almost on every minute. They are anxious. They want to see that this crop is taking off from Kenya to the destination. That is just how we are going to manage this. And the faster we can work with government and other partners to find a solution as quickly as possible, the better it is, not just for us as producers and exporters, but for the economy of this country and all the people who depend on this industry.
So I ask again, Clement, do you feel like the government is taking this with the urgency that the rest of you have?
We would want government to move a bit faster on this matter. We know that we have a responsibility as producers also to put some solutions before government, but we believe that when we put solutions, then the government needs to look at it much quicker probably than they're doing, and work with us to find out how we can actualize some of these solutions.
Clement, there's the issue of wanting to supply flowers back to Europe, for example, but then in this case, being sellers, has the demand gotten back to where it was before? Because even if you do get this help from government, for example, and the required support, and then being able to freight flowers back to Europe, are we looking at the numbers, the uptake as it was before already? Has the door opened to where it was before?
We are demanding this because we are seeing the demand in the market going up. At the moment, we are almost at about 60-65% of what we expect. And so we have to keep it going. The auction had gone down up to about 15%. We have seen it going up. Now it's about 50-55%. And so we have to keep it going. This is the only way we can demonstrate that we are still in business, and give confidence even to the market that we have the produce and we can supply it to the market. We can't wait for it to get to 100% before we decide to ship.
Is your competition reacting faster than you?
Probably, yes. And because of logistics, we are ready as exporters, but the logistics are a major drawback. So we can say that is true. I think the market is reacting faster than we're doing.
And as we conclude this conversation, Clement, let's talk about the workers, the plight of the flower farm workers. So you've told us that flower farms have maintained a skeleton staff. The others have been sent on leave. Others are on unpaid leave, I'd assume. What would we say is happening to those workers? Any kind of support that they're receiving from the flower farm, from the association, in terms of upkeep?
We are trying to support our workers as much as possible to the best of what we can do. All these measures that we have put in place are measures that have been discussed extensively with government and with trade unions and many other people who have interest in how we do business. You will also understand that from ourselves as Kenya Flower Council and basically the flower industry are our own standards that govern how we do business. So we have made sure that everyone who takes a step in terms of what the flower farms do adhere to all the rules that we have set. We call it a code of practice, but also agrees with what government expects from us and other stakeholders. By the way, the question of workers is not just a question of Kenya. Even in the marketplace, they are very, very keen on how we manage our workers. So we are doing this with all the understanding across the major stakeholders on how we need to manage this. As I said, a lot of workers are basically on leave at the moment, on paid leave. Very few are on unpaid leave, and we want to maintain them. In fact, for us, if we had freight and we continue exporting, then we can start receiving our workers back to the farms as quickly as possible. A lot of farms are asking, when can we have our workers back? But because we are short on income, cash flow, we have to maintain some of them back at home at the moment. But we are eager to have all the workers back on the farm. We have continued to have in areas where we cannot send everyone home. A lot of workers are working on part-time, so that at least everyone has a bit of what he or she can continue to survive on, even through these difficult times. So no one has actually been sent home per se. No one has been fired. There has been a lot of publicity around, workers have been sent home, they've been fired. That is not true. A lot of our workers are just on leave, and we want to have them back as quickly as possible.
Okay. Thank you very much, Clement. And it sounds like there is a ray of hope. There's actually a window opening up for the floriculture industry. The only thing that we need is for the government to help you unlock those doors and to push open the doors, to get the freighters back, to get the costs manageable.
Yes, that's true.
And we hope that this happens as soon as possible.
Sure, we also hopeful that this can happen within the next 1 or 2 weeks.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. Now go back to your 100 calls for the day.
Thanks, Clement. Remain positive.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure talking to you. Okay, bye.
Asante, have a good one.
Okay, bye.
It's 29 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is a situation on Kenya's biggest conversation. Now you hear there's a possibility of things happening. I just hope that after this, Clement gets a call. Let's have this conversation. We have these freighters. They are ready to come. What else do you want us to help you with in terms of just looking at how to lower the prices? Let's take a look at weather and traffic shortly. Good morning.
Mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi today. Chance of rain very high in a short while. Highs of 23 and lows of 15. Looking into Nakuru then at 17 degrees. Cloudy conditions through and through. 22 degrees the high and lows of 14 with expected showers. In Nyeri at 17 degrees is cloudy conditions. Thunderstorms expected with highs of 22 and lows of 15. Eldoret is cloudy this morning. Will carry on through most of the day. Showers will come in with a high of 19 and it'll come low to 13. Kisumu at 19 degrees, mostly cloudy conditions. Thunderstorms expected for late parts of the day with highs of 24 and lows of 19. In Malindi at 25 degrees is mostly cloudy. Mostly cloudy conditions will carry through the day, highs of 31 and lows of 26. In Mombasa at 27 degrees, cloudy conditions through and through, highs of 29 and lows of 26. In Kampala, Uganda this morning at 19 degrees, it's cloudy conditions all through and inviting the rain in the afternoon with highs of 24 and lows of 19. Dar es Salaam is mostly cloudy this morning at 26 degrees, highs of 31 and lows of 24. Mostly cloudy conditions to carry on through most of this Monday. At 11 degrees, it's mostly sunny in South Africa. It'll carry on through the day. In Johannesburg, highs of 22 and lows of 10. And finally, in Lagos at 27 degrees, it's clear skies all through, partly cloudy conditions to follow later with highs of 33 and lows of 27.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, a bit slippery in some parts of the city today. Showers coming down in some areas of Nairobi. So you need to be very careful, guys. Not many people on the roads this morning. So I know that you're tempted to go a little bit quicker than you actually should. It'll cause an accident like what we've seen in Parklands already this morning. So please do try and avoid this. Waiting for emergency services to get there to sort out that accident that we've seen right around that area. So approach with caution and please then move a little bit slower. It should be fine apart from that. Not much traffic. What we saw on Mombasa Road seems to have eased up a little bit. Coming off Langata Road and Gong Road is looking really good this morning. Open, clear and free. Spice FM KE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Let's know what you see. But for now, you should be able to get where you're going in record time.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
In the room, you have Eric Latif, Nduoko, and C.T. Muga, the paragon of wisdom.
Hiya.
You didn't know?
No, I didn't know.
Set you up there, right?
No, there you've set me up.
Completely, right?
So I'm not even allowed to say anything stupid.
No.
Not today.
If you don't give us wisdom, the village idiot
will give you village idiocy.
Yes. So be very careful.
You know, let me just go over this saying again so that we don't forget what it is. Huh? Milk and honey don't have the same color, but they share the same house peacefully. Simple, straightforward. There's something I wanted to touch on. No? Our friend from Nyeri brought in something that he actually touched on a subject that perhaps we need to look at a little more. He was talking about helplessness. Now, you need to distinguish between helplessness and hopelessness.
And hopelessness.
Yes.
Which is worse?
Hopelessness.
Being hopeless. So when someone calls you hopeless, they basically...
Yani, you've gone beyond the bottom of the barrel.
So hopeless is even worse than useless.
It's worse. It's worse because there is no ray of light. There is nothing nothing. When someone is helpless, usually it means this. They have tried to achieve certain things and they haven't quite achieved them. And usually the problem is this. The achievement is based on expectation. Sometimes their own, some of others. So if they don't meet this particular quotient, then they then feel that they're unable to. This feeling of not being able to, that's helplessness. But it's something someone can overcome. Now, hopelessness. Now, when you are helpless, then one could say you've lost hope. Now, hopelessness is a continuation, a cementing, a concretizing of this feeling. Now, that is now what you would define definitively as a mental health condition. That is now someone who definitely needs a lot of help. Chemical, counseling, any help. That is a person in that, because that person is now unwell.
Completely.
Because it means they've given up completely. Not given up. For that instance, they've given
no
up
reason
completely.
To be alive.
None whatsoever. That's where they get to. When someone is helpless, it's just that they feel shackled, but they can move. Hopeless, no movement. See no need. Now, what the caller was trying to suggest, that many of these young people are in a state of hopelessness. No, they're in a state of helplessness. You go to college, you get a degree, you get a diploma, you get a certificate, and your expectation is that you will work. And with this expectation, there is a certain type of work that you anticipate you will do. When this doesn't happen, you try a hand at something, usually half-heartedly, so the results are also half-hearted. But
just as a stopgap measure.
Yes, but you still have at the back of your mind what you expected to do. Then there is this need to perhaps meet some parental aspiration. You felt your parent expect this of you, your society, your community. If you have a spouse, a partner, the partner expected this of you. Now, when you aren't achieving what you set out to do, then you get into this spiraling state of helplessness. Yes, it starts with helplessness, then it spirals, it goes hopelessness. Now, it is true that people who are in this state tend to be more fatalistic, meaning they actually, as you correctly put it, they don't care. It is a safer state to be in because you're not expecting anything. You're not anticipating anything. So the issue of disappointment doesn't even arise.
It doesn't arise.
No. So you just wake up and just do what you think you want to do. And when asked, you'll say, yeah, but you know something, I will die anyway.
I'm going to die anyway.
If things go south, you're like...
This is the thing. So when you want to introduce, a matter like COVID, it's business as usual.
So what?
It's just going to go along with the flow of things that have been going as they were before. Because you didn't expect anything fantastic to happen. The state at which you were in already means that, all right, nothing is going to come along which is going to worsen my situation. The way in which I'm feeling is already bad anyway, and the way in which I see things is already bad. So anything that's going to come along is just going to play companion to what I am already in. It's not going to worsen it. Neither am I going to feel any worse about this, but we're just going to continue as we have been. So when you're asking me to stay away from people, or you're asking me to stay away from, an activity like drinking, it's the one thing or the one place where I could go, or the one thing that I could do that would provide me some kind of temporary relief.
What augments this thing is not just that feeling, but an acceptance that nothing better is coming. When they get to that stage, then that's where the real problem is. Because they're actually not moving because they've come, or they said, okay, this is where I am.
This is where I am. Nothing is going to change.
Yes. Now, that is where the problem is. When someone gets to that point, you are not going to tell them anything to convince them unless they can change their mind and anticipate something better is going to happen. If they stay in that state, you're thinking of ambulances. Ambulances are mild. They'll think of other things to do.
Bigger.
If you look at any community or society where you found very wanton behavior among young people, you'll find that it also corresponds to unemployment. The drinking that took center stage in our country, and then in some parts of the country more than others among young people, it was, again, contributed by this very factor. They didn't see what else there was to do, really. And the alcohol was nice and cheap, and it rendered you, when it put you in a state of stupor, where you didn't have to think very hard. And so the day went by, and you woke up the following day to consider what next to do with the new day. Purpose for most people involves doing something you think is meaningful. So if that is taken away from you, then the alternative you have is that state of helplessness.
So here we are, City. Yes, we have people who are feeling helpless. Like Dennis said, he's calling from Nyeri. Dennis was saying, this is where we are. I mean, you're telling me about COVID. Look, what is COVID? But we also have COVID, and we have people who are endangering others by just the way they behave. What do we do, City? How do we address people like Dennis and the others? How do we speak to them? How do we reach out to them?
This problem didn't begin with COVID. COVID has just made it manifest itself a lot clearer. Because you would assume that anything that is life-threatening would be taken seriously. They don't. At the peak of HIV and AIDS, a saying came into the fore. It was fatalistic as it was blasé. And it was said in Luo that a cow dies with grass in its mouth. That was the response you got and told someone, you need to use a condom. You need to be careful, tells you. Chief, a cow dies with the grass in its mouth.
You have fed it.
Yes.
It will still die.
So, I've heard you, but...
But the thing is, just as you were talking about that, before Eric has a moment,
Yes.
People are not seeing this though as life-threatening. CT, going back to your earlier point.
No.
People are not even. It doesn't even come into play.
Even if they don't, it's not a priority.
It's not an issue for them.
It's not.
But
But I'm also thinking,
life-threatening. It's all right. Let that step in. But other things that we're also dealing with right now are life-threatening, like lack of a job, which essentially would help me feed myself and my family. That too, if you want to look at it, is life-threatening. So then it depends on how we are going to define which is more life-threatening than the other. So it really doesn't take center stage. And what they're being asked, what everybody is being asked right now is that this thing as COVID must take center stage. But for them for people, I'm not even going to say them, because for people where we all exist, there are other things which take priority.
But I'd like us to
over
separate
everything
those
else.
people now. After listening to Dennis and after understanding that context from what CT you're saying, I'd like us to separate those people. There are people like the MCAs who are not in any state of helplessness.
But are still jumping
it's
about.
just impunity. And then there are people who are like Dennis, who are, if you approach them the same way, you may not be able to win this war. I think we need to separate how we approach the two.
Even within
Crack
that same
down and
Democrat...
go and take the guy, the kid, and his friends who are commandeering an ambulance with the aid of their mother, and the MCAs and such people who are holding parties. Those ones drop the hammer.
I get you, but
how do you deal with Dennis?
Hear what Dennis said. It's a group of people who are drinking too, but the reasons why they're drinking is not for
different.
fun. It's just because they don't have another outlet for their frustration, right?
And
arresting them and
beating
them
not
up.
going to make a difference.
There are two different sides of the same coin. Huh? Remember, an MCA, a judge, a senior government official, a politician, these are people who have power, their position, their visibility, and this is the perverse way in which they are exhibiting all these attributes that they have or are given to them or accorded to them by virtue of either an election or by virtue of an appointment or by virtue of qualification. What you are discussing is what one may refer to as the moral code by which people in authority live in this country, or the lack of moral code by which they live. And then you're discussing something that is a known mental condition. You see, hopelessness leads to despair. And there are certain activities that you will recognize and you will attribute to people who are in despair, people who are hopeless. Drinking is one of them. Someone who just seems to drink without any consideration of tomorrow, that person is not well. Somebody who behaves, for instance, you've heard of these many gangs that attack people. Many of them tend to be very young people.
Yeah.
If you look at studies, there are few that have been done on these young people. That money, if they get it, is consumed within the next 2 days. It doesn't last a week. That's why they have to go and steal again. They want to buy a certain type of clothes. They want to go to a certain place, a type of place. They want to be seen as being a certain type of person. So they live for the moment. So death is okay. If they've lived for the moment, it's okay.
Problem.
It's all right. And the reason is because there's nothing in their lives that have given them the hope for tomorrow. The MPs, the MCAs, the leaders, they not only have a hope for tomorrow, they actually live for tomorrow.
Yeah.
But it is that moral attribute that I spoke of that now comes into play. They don't believe that they should live by example. They believe they should live by speaking, by throwing words at things. If you're asked to do something, they throw some word that seems to placate people sufficiently. If they are something, again, they say it's what they do. And you get to the point where we actually now judge them by the things they say. Someone makes a nice speech, we say, this person sounds like a good leader. He speaks nicely. Leadership is a completely different thing.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally.
Someone may be an excellent leader but can't speak to save his life. So, what you are discussing is the reality of the conflicting situations and issues that our people as Kenyans face. And the reactions that you're seeing is a manifestation of the very, very same problems that we have. One group of people reacts in one way, the other
reacts in a different
two
way.
sides of the same coin. Really.
Same coin.
Yes.
The thing is, though, they all exist in a society that can be replicated elsewhere. So if you want to take just a trip over to Uganda, same kind of people exist. How is it then that they have been able to understand what is needed of them to do?
Have they solved all their issues, though?
No, of course not solved, but for some reason they're adhering.
Actually,
they've sorted
everybody,
out. They've sorted out movement.
Exactly, that has been sorted out, but the issues have not been solved. But in this case, what they're trying to do is stop this thing from moving, right? To stop more infections from taking place.
Steps.
All of these people in the same, exactly. But all of these people that we've described here, you will find that they also exist across the border.
But I'm wondering what happens to the mental state of the people who are in the helpless state. Lock them up, lock them down without even having a better conversation with them. Do you push them into that state of hopelessness?
Oh yes, you'll fast forward that thing very quickly.
All right, so let's take a short break, and that's what I was saying. How do we address this particular cluster of people that require maybe a different conversation? How do we address them so that we are walking this journey together, so we can emerge at the end of this COVID together? It's 12 minutes to 9 o'clock. Good morning. Ten to 9.
Well, I am certainly not going to take over the role of mental health specialist. So this is what I'm going to say. Mental health specialists know exactly what can be done, should be done, and should have been done. And they even offer advice. The issue here is, will they be listened to? You know, for how long we dragged this issue of, please stop the bureaucrats talking to us about COVID. Bring health experts who understand these things to tell us about these things. You remember how long that took? Now, we're having this discussion saying there are these people who had a problem before COVID. The issue of COVID is going to exacerbate the situation. What do we need to do? And I'm saying we have enough mental health specialists in this country who know exactly what to do. Let me take it even further. Books have been written. There is documented evidence as to what you do in such cases. It doesn't matter what they had before. But it is known the steps to follow, how you go about it, how you even recognize that this person may be having this sort of challenge. What they do, how this helplessness, how this hopelessness manifests itself. It is not something that is unknown. It can be diagnosed syndromically. Somebody can look and tell you this is it. But they can be brought in, they can be examined, and they can be told. What I'm saying, Eric, is this, the facilities that we've had for dealing with these things in this country, we may need to improve on them, but we have them. So such cases can be handled. If you're talking about quarantine and somebody seems to be exhibiting a mental health condition, please do not take him to a quarantine setup within a regular hospital if it doesn't have a mental health facility. If it doesn't have a mental health facility, then consider seriously setting up a mental health unit within these facilities so that people who have such problems can also be helped. As you're dealing with the COVID issue, you're dealing with the mental health as well.
Do you think that if you just look at the way the system has been operating, just look at it, where we talked about within quarantine centers, we've seen a serious lapse in how they've been able to enforce and ensure that certain things are going on. If you want to look at the social side of things, people not then adhering or listening to what people are saying, do you think that we'll be able to then start to separate between this individual who seems to have a mental health issue and this one and somebody else? Do you think at this point they're dealing with that? Right now they're dealing with, have we tested? How many cases do we have? What are we trying to do to curb the problem?
Which is making it worse. There's a story.
Do you think that they right now, with the capacity that we've talked about...
Are you asking, can we do it, or is it being done?
No. It's not can we do it. Can we? Absolutely. Can we? Capacity? Yes, that is clear. But I am saying right now, is there the will or even the mindset to say, actually, you know what? Here's a demographic of people that we've actually... No mindset. There isn't. That's what I'm saying. There's none.
And it's very clear.
It is not there.
Look, people, we speak to people who have been in these quarantine facilities, and none of them has told us that they've been visited by somebody to talk to them.
We even asked and said, do people come and visit on a regular basis? Have you seen a counselor?
No, you haven't seen a counselor. Have you seen anybody to offer you, psychological and support? Nothing. There's a lady who's been serialized. Her story has been serialized by the Daily Nation for a couple of days now. Joyce Wangeshi. Today's article is talking about why it's difficult to follow rules and keep sane in quarantine. She has been talking about how she sought to leave Spain in the peak of the lockdowns and everything, and she wanted to come to Kenya. So she arrived in Kenya. She was taken to quarantine facility, and she's saying, while we're there, this place it drains you psychologically. It basically does drain you psychologically, and it's very difficult. So have they ever seen anybody like a counselor? No. Psychiatrists? No. They don't get any of that kind of support. And now, just to take us back to what we're discussing, there's a headline in today's Nation: reckless youth fuels spread of COVID-19. This is not just the headline that takes this. It's even what the government has been saying. The CS, Mutahi Kagwe has been talking about this. The CAS, Dr. Mercy Mwangangi talks about this. Every time they're giving us the updates on a daily basis, they start from the point of there are very many people who are breaking the law. There are very many people who are not following the procedures that we set in place. And then we got a caller, and this is Dennis, who was calling in from Nyeri, and he said, look, I'm speaking for myself and for many others, people who are in a state where we are feeling, look, the society has given up on us, and those were his words. The society has given up on us. We have sort of given up on ourselves. We are feeling we are at this point where, what is death? We really don't care. If you're telling us to, self-isolate, wash our hands just because of COVID-19, we don't care. And that brought up the issue of how do we actually address the people who are in this kind of state? Because these ones are different from the people like MCAs who directly host a party to drink and eat ugali and avocado.
You see, that's the thing. But this is the front and center is trying to round up people, right? If we want to, we talked to a mental health specialist just before the weekend,
Dr.
on Friday,
Bukusi, yes.
Dr. Bukusi. And what did he tell us? It was very clear that in terms of even regard for the mental state of people in this country, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, right? Is it possible then to introduce that aspect into what is happening now? We can hear from the Ministry of Health that they're crying every day to try and get people to just do those 3 things that they've asked them to do.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that they're going to be able to split it now and say, actually, even in the quarantine centers where we're talking about, you've just given us an example now, people are not both mental health. No, it's a matter of symptoms, quarantine, positive,
and now it's become
isolation, not positive, isolation, quarantine again for another 14 days. That's it. Nobody's dealing with it. Outside of that, are we really, and I'm going to put burden in quotes, are we ready to burden an already burdened system then with trying to split issues in terms of who is unwell and then who is unwell
who
mentally?
Requires help,
are they going to be able to do that one? This one,
important.
It is very important, but this one that is the center.
What you're asking,
even that is not being done.
What you're asking is, are they willing to do it? Because if you ask, are they able to do it? I will tell you,
they're
yes.
able to do it.
Capacity, ability, that one is not a question. It's not a question. But right now, is the mindset sitting? That's what I'm saying. The mindset at this point, there is nothing. There's no will.
Even to better manage the quarantine facilities.
The way they've been doing it, and not to be questioned.
It's a matter of, are we going to be able to handle this thing? Can we manage this COVID that's looking at us like this? To say that we have so-and-so cases, so-and-so testing, that is it. Anything else outside of that right now is not a priority.
Dr. Heckner said something that I caught. I don't know whether you caught it. He said they are working under emergency laws now.
In Switzerland.
Yes. Now, this is a country that is known, if you're talking about individual democracy, no country in the world beats it. Okay? But they've decided this one
is an emergency.
Those rights, suspend.
Emergency law.
Suspend. We are deciding for you. If we elect the leaders, that's what we expect them to do. Don't engage us in a debate now. You know what needs to be done.
But also go further. You can do all those things, but if we go with the kind of mindset that currently have, where we see, the Director General of Health issuing an edict and saying, people in these quarantine facilities have flouted the regulations and therefore increase their quarantine period by a further 4. This man has never visited any of these quarantine facilities.
That was an extremely unfortunate.
Doesn't know what it looks like behind the door.
The people right below him, the Director of Medical Services for Public Health and the others, have not visited these quarantine facilities. So basically what you're being told is by some officer down there, information has been brought up to you that
this and this is happening.
He hasn't verified.
He hasn't verified it. At this point, when you're seeing people have been in quarantine for 14 days, you've
14 days is a long
28
time,
days, and there's still more cases, the least you'd expect it at least Mutahi Kagwe and Dr. Patrick Amoth to go to this quarantine.
They're only 4. They're in Nairobi. Going on.
Just go there and see what exactly what is it. Aren't you guys getting the message?
Have they gone?
Have they gone? They haven't gone. Now, bring in those draconian laws that remove the rights.
Remove the rights. Then now you want to, on top of them, ask them, actually, you know what? Within this group of people are certain people who already might be skewed towards,
and they require a bit of a delicate,
but they need a delicate approach to this. Folks, do you think they're really going to take that into consideration?
There's a larger picture here. Not quarantine, larger picture of the country and health. There are decisions that need to be made. There is a lockdown that needs to be put in place, put in place.
Yep.
There's action that needs to be taken. I'm simply saying it isn't the time for debate. We know what needs to be done.
It's the time to do things.
Just do the right thing.
But don't just talk about doing.
No.
Do and follow through. We're coming to the top of the hour. Dr. David Bukusi, the mental health specialist that we spoke to last week, is graciously willing to speak to us again on this particular issue that we're talking about. So we'll be speaking to him in the next hour. As we get to the top of the hour, C.T. Muga, today's proverb about the land of milk and honey.
It's always good to have someone add an addendum to what you're saying. The land is a good addition. But what I said was, milk and honey don't have the same color, but they share the same house peacefully.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
Traffic right around Mufaiga this morning is hold up for some reason getting towards the Pangani underpass. I guess everybody gets out right about 9 o'clock expecting there will be no traffic, and then voila, there you find it. So a little bit of it there. There's an accident at the Pangani tunnel, guys. I told you to be careful. Jam building up right around there. So let's see if that can be cleared out. So the accident then causes a lot of the traffic that we see behind that. Old Mombasa Road, everybody trying to use the road behind then the ICD. There it is, bumper to bumper, not opening up. Bumper to bumper is not a term we've heard recently, is it? Well, let's see how that can open up in a short while, trying to get people to move out as quickly as possible. Apart from that, not so bad in different parts of the city. Gong Road looking really, really good. Langata Road take you about 5 minutes from the Bomas Junction all the way to the T-Mall roundabout, so it's fantastic. But please be very careful wherever it is that you're going. Spice FM KE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Let's see what you see, and we'll give you more information about how things can open up ASAP.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people.
This is also Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting from Nairobi to Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, everywhere across the globe on www.spicefm.co.ke and also on SpiceFM.ke, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of them. So we are talking about how to treat people who may be in that state where we're saying these guys may require a bit of extra care or extra conversation or extra convincing in terms of telling them this is where we are asking you to obey these rules. This is why we are applying these interventions. This is why we'd like you to follow these interventions so we can stop the spread of COVID-19. And then there are those people who are blatantly just breaking the law because they think they have a sense of impunity. If you look at somebody who knows that their mother is a manager with E+ ambulance services and therefore they can call their mother and their mother can send an ambulance, that's impunity. If you look at somebody who is an MCA and can go to a certain house and they can buy mbuzi and they can come buy avocado and make ugali and host a party, that's impunity. It's a different. Avocado is there. Yes. They saw the footage.
Avocado.
There was avocado there. Avocado, ugali, and nyama, and booze.
Okay, do they also have salt?
I don't know. Well, maybe the nyama choma would. You know the way they put salt there on the edge of Maybe these are the guys who do avocado with sugar. Never know.
It's very tasty.
You never know. You never know. No, you're asking, is it possible to get that mindset of people working? And then CT is saying, look, that's not the point. The point here is come up with more stringent rules and say, this is the way to go. Then we shall deal with the issues later as we progress.
You know, a certain order has to be. You know what we're discussing here is a complete absence of order. People just doing whatever
they want.
Exactly. Now, there has to be order. But where you do have a point is when you're talking about leadership that doesn't listen or doesn't pay heed to advice, then that's a bit tricky. Yes. Because the truth of the matter is this, we have not had any disproportionate absence of human facilities, human resource. That has not actually been the problem. Our problem all along has been deploying them, employing them, making sure that they're available.
Yeah.
I've given examples in the past and I've made reference to HIV, and I've said, the structures that we have in place for dealing with HIV are still in place. People were taught how to counsel. All you need to do is figure out what sort of counseling message do you need for COVID-19. But somebody who has the basic tenets of counseling, they exist. Counseling, believe me, is counseling. Now it's a question of specializing it. Substance abuse, HIV, discordant couples. But the basics are there. Now, the track record that we have for utilizing resources that are available is not a good one.
Nope.
And that's where Eric has a point. The track record we have for ensuring that the resources that we have are utilized in the best way possible, again, it's not a good one. So again, there we have a problem. So this mindset that I would ask, how then do we get the mindset of the leadership to actually do what they're supposed to do? That's the question I would ask.
The thing is that if you had leadership from the very beginning who knew what they were doing, focused in the beginning.
They know what to do.
No, not what to do. No. What to do and what they are doing. Those are two totally different things, CT.
You're saying leaders who know what they are doing.
Are doing right now. Ask them, if you go and sit and ask them, what are you supposed to be doing? They will spell it out for you very nicely, CT. Are aware. right?
I agree.
But in the moment where you are saying, actually, you know what, here it is spelled out, very clear, this is the direction in which we're taking, I would be very surprised if you find that you would have very many who would tell you, actually, you know what, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing, this is who is sitting in this position, and this is how they're taking this thing to its end.
We have X number of people in quarantine facilities. 17 of them have stayed for 28 days, 5 of them on their 4th day.
Of those X number, these particular people are vulnerable at this point? No.
You just have
what
a blanket.
they're doing? No. And that's unfortunate.
Who is that
especially when you're dealing with something. You go and
Yes.
ask them. Especially, very unfortunate, especially when you're dealing with something as delicate as this.
Yep.
Right? We just talked about, isn't it a shame, isn't it a pity that you give an edict over something of which you have little eye knowledge, little nose knowledge. You really
Especially
don't
to a
know
matter
the
where you're saying
situation,
You're condemning
what it
somebody
is,
to a further 14 days
of which
in
they have to pay
isolation,
out of pocket.
and they have
They've
to pay.
not seen their family members. They don't know what is going
And
on.
your blanket condemnation is you broke the law, so you deserve it.
All of you don't know the
Are they
details of
positive or
it.
they're negative?
It
don't.
doesn't
Number
matter.
You
one.
may know, but they don't know. You've not given them any kind of response.
They don't get the results.
More to the
They
point.
just all go home.
You know,
Let's before you do that, CT, let's talk to Robert, who's calling in from Nakuru. Robert, good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Okay, I've been thinking through about this COVID stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that come in my mind is how can we actually, what is the biggest lesson? My thinking is life. Life is worth preserving. And all these things that we are seeing, it's actually, we are trying to preserve life. We are setting up things that are going to help us have some cash to help other people. I think we have neglected life, the dignity of life for the longest time. I don't know, maybe as a country, actually, as a government. And I see, actually, when you take an example of why do I have to go to a 2-bedroom house if I'm struggling to feed myself with my family? What I see is that the government may have moved us to a 2-bedroom house when we are struggling at the expense of people who are not feeding. So in future, I think it's time we go to the basic. Because if I was to consider pre-COVID, before COVID, how many deaths were occurring each and every day because of an issue that we can intervene? Not we say people are still gonna die, but there are those that we can actually intervene and have something that we can do. So I'm worried that the government, or as a people, we may have neglected the dignity of life. How can we preserve life? Give them the basic needs. That was I was taught in primary school: shelter, clothing, food. Before now we go to the other bigger things and everything, we can be able now to. We have settled the food thing, the other thing, because we want to preserve life. The first thing. Because I'm quite sure that if COVID was just affecting a few people, maybe the few privileged or certain kind of people, we will not have the lockdown in the world. But now COVID is, as City says, very democratic. It can be anywhere, it can reach anywhere. So we had to shut things up. But we didn't shut the world or the airplane coming in and out or the economy when we were still having other deaths which are happening. I believe we have been having deaths in the country, more deaths maybe even we are having in the country, even before COVID. But now we are very sensitive. We don't want people to die. So death is something. So life, therefore focusing on life. So I believe after COVID, we must see on how we must preserve life. Let us go back to
going forward. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Asante sana for call 0719012600. You can also post your comments and join the conversation on Twitter at SpiceFMKE and Facebook SpiceFMKE. Good morning. So, City, before you went to Robert's call, you were making a point.
My point was a simple one. We keep talking about change, and I would prefer to ask, if we were to implement these things we're saying, and who brought up the issue? The mindset of those in leadership and decision-making positions. How do we get them to change their minds, to understand that they need to act and they need to put in place activities, they need to put in place policies that will ensure that we actually solve this problem, because they have the ability to. We keep saying the citizens have things to do, but this one, it's them who can do. What do we need to do to drive it home to this group of people who are acting more like a gang than people who actually have been bestowed upon a responsibility for looking after the livelihood of their people? What do we get them? What is it that needs to be done for them to get to the point where they realize, look, let's stop this infighting about division of spoils as they see it. This money that has come in, why don't we should be debating as to which takes priority first. That is a good debate. But who should control it? That should not be a debate that is coming. It shouldn't come into place. They shouldn't take long to utilize the resources that already exist. And they shouldn't manipulate it to suit their purposes. The purpose here and the focus should be the people of Kenya. That should be the focus. Some of the reluctance that you see in private sector is because of this. They are willing to give money, but they're not sure it's going to be put to good use. Reluctance.
And how it's going to be managed.
They are not sure.
They want it to be managed by other. You see, like now saying that fund is being led by private sector players.
Yes.
We're willing to contribute to that fund.
They'll give it.
We're willing to operate with this fund because we can see this fund and the money is not going anywhere into the national treasury.
No.
That's okay.
They will give.
Where will it stay? A bank account.
And what do you guys want to do with it? This. And you'll give us a report of what needs to happen. Fine. They will
Here's
give
the money.
You see, it's an indictment on the trust issue. This trust deficit is really the discussion here. If this trust deficit can be reduced, unfortunately, leadership has to take the first position. The population will do their bit, but so long as they do not see it, so long as the discordance, so long as there's uncertainty, so long as the questions being raised and adequate responses are not being given, then unfortunately this state that we're in, it's not going to go away soon.
Okay, so getting back now into the issue, we have COVID-19. It's spreading. There's community transmission. The numbers are rising. That means, and it's now going across the country. That means in every county there's at least somebody who's positive with COVID-19. Some of them have tested, some have not, right? And we need to ensure that we go by the protocol set in place. Reduce movement, ensure that you're observing personal hygiene. And then there are those who are trying to observe and there are those who are not trying to observe for whatever reason. Impunity or
whatever reason you want.
Whatever reason. How do we deal with this so that we ensure that we stop the spread of the virus?
One of the things that has always worked at a social level is, people call it shaming, but I call it calling out. You will find that some of the cases where people have been found out, it's other people the citizenry have reported. They have gone and said, these people are drinking in the bar. They've closed doors. These people they've reported. It means there are people who are responsible enough to understand our lives are in danger and we're not going to let these people endanger our lives. You see more of that. Irrespective of who it is, you say, this is what ought to be done, this is not what's being done.
Community policing.
Yes, it has to be enhanced. That is now when the community will have embraced, safety measures to look after itself. Because if someone is coming from outside, for whatever reason, but they're coming from outside, the likelihood of them coming with this disease is high.
It's high.
So if you protect them, all you're doing is you're allowing them to infect you. That's precisely what you're doing. If they come, many of them, then all you've done is you've allowed even more people to come and infect you. Now, it sounds a little bizarre. If your children go out to a party where you don't know who else they mix with, and you allow them to come back into your house,
and
they haven't gone into quarantine, then you have invited death into your own house.
Imagine.
You've done so. You think you're protecting something, but you're actually opening the doors wide open and letting it. You're inviting it to come in. These aren't times for normal behavior.
No.
Normal values. No. Survival values require that even this thing which is uncomfortable for you, you must do when you consider the greater good.
And as unpalatable as it sounds, these are not also times to listen to people's opinions, to talk about things about, what do I think, my rights and that other thing. People will die. It's not about a time to tell me what your contribution towards this thing is. It's very clear how you can operate to stem the spread of this thing. And it's along those lines that we must go.
Let's take a break, take a look at weather, and then we come back. We'll be joined by Dr. Mercy Korir after the short break. Dr. Mercy Korir is KTN's medical journalist. She's been our guest host in this season. If you've got any questions regarding COVID-19 that you'd like a doctor to respond to, Dr. Mercy Korir is the person to call. Good morning, 16 minutes after 9.
It's 18 degrees in Nairobi and mostly cloudy conditions. A chance of rain quite high in the afternoon, highs of 23 and lows of 15. Taking a look then into Nakuru, and there is cloudy conditions all through at 17 degrees. Thunderstorms expected later as well, with highs of 22 and lows of 14. Taking a look then into Nyeri at 18 degrees. It's cloudy conditions. Rain starting very soon, highs of 22 and lows of 15. In Eldoret, it's mostly cloudy and rain showers expected later, highs of 19, and it'll be a cool evening at 13 degrees with a low. 21 degrees in Kisumu and mostly cloudy. Showers expected in the afternoon with highs of 24 and lows of 19. Taking a look then into Malindi at 26 degrees. It's mostly cloudy conditions. Showers are forecasted for the afternoon with highs of 31 and lows of 26. Mombasa at 27 degrees is mostly cloudy. Clear conditions later on with highs of 29 and lows of 26. Taking a look into Kampala, where it's cloudy conditions at 20 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 19. Showers expected there as well. In Tanzania at 28 degrees, the cloud has lifted at 28 degrees. It's mostly cloudy, highs of 31 and lows of 24. And in Joburg at 13 degrees, it's mostly sunny conditions, clear skies in the afternoon with highs of 22 and lows of 11. Finally, in Lagos at 27 degrees, it's clear skies with a few clouds. Later on, highs of 33 and lows of 26.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Nduo call CT Muga, and now joining us on the line is Dr. Marcy Korir, our guest host for the season. Daktari, good morning.
Good morning, Eric and CT and Ndu. How are you this morning?
We are fine,
Good.
Thank you. Happy Monday.
Yeah, happy Monday. Yes, I hope it is a happy Monday. You know, nowadays anything goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you never know.
Every day is today.
True. Mm-hmm.
Daktari, we saw you taking the COVID-19 tests.
Or we thought we did.
Yes,
did you actually take the test?
Yeah.
I did. I did. In fact, I think most people after seeing that, the only thing they remembered was that, Daktari, we saw you tearing.
Yes.
Okay, they called it crying, but I'd rather call it tearing.
You were crying like a little baby.
Tell me, what is it? They tickle your nostrils?
No. It's far much worse than tickling. It is just an uncomfortable feeling that irritates irritates the nostril. So the reflex actually is tearing, not crying.
Right.
It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. I think that's the best description I can give.
So what were they doing? Taking a swab?
Yes, taking a swab from the nasopharynx, or quote unquote the back of the nose, and then from the back of the throat.
So you get the same. So you're irritated up your nose, and then you're also irritated down your throat.
Yes. And at least, lucky for me, I did not have any adverse event, because they tell me some people actually just keep sneezing throughout.
Oh, goodness.
Others get a gag reflex and can actually vomit. And some of my colleagues who had this test done before have actually reacted like that. One was telling me how she threw up. So it's uncomfortable, but manageable.
But also the entire process takes about what, less than a minute, or is it?
It was. I think. Okay. It felt like it was a whole lot of time.
But how long was it really?
I think it was about 10 seconds. But when you're there, it feels like it's really, really a long time.
Right.
Because I couldn't wait for him to get off my nostril.
Now I'm imagining with somebody who's coughing, right? They already have an irritated throat.
Yes.
How easy would it be to get that swab down the throat?
It is, because you see that movement just opens up your throat, so they are able to take one swab across the throat.
Okay.
So it actually doesn't take long. Maybe it could be probably 5 seconds or less. So it's manageable.
I see.
It's just that when you're there, it feels like it's forever.
Yeah.
How long does it take before you get your results?
So my results took 3 hours. So after 3 hours, I knew my test results. So usually, I think comparing with what you see in government, it takes long because of the logistics around it, but the actual lab process takes 3 hours.
Okay.
So the government process is just a lot of logistics. I don't know, somebody needs to take the samples to the lab, then somebody else has
a
to...
different person takes it.
Yeah, then communicate, then it has to go to the ministry first. I remember we said time and again, even from our own assessment and talking to some of the people who are in quarantine or isolation, they actually don't get their results.
They don't.
Unless you're positive. The rest are told, assume. If we didn't talk to you, just assume that it was a negative result.
No, but is that the right way to handle this matter, really?
Of course it's not. I mean, it's you've taken my samples. The least somebody should do is communicate my test results back and give me evidence. Yes, and give me evidence that this is what we tested.
Yep.
This is the lab results. Now, you see, like for me at Lancet, I have a record of it. That this is when we took the sample, these are the symptoms you presented with, if any or none, and this was the test results. So at the very least, that's what should be happening with the government testing. That's why you find some people are always saying, because you've not seen anything, any evidence, you're not even sure whether when they tell you it was positive, whether it is actually positive. And especially if somebody is asymptomatic without any symptoms. So they're like, okay, I'm not even sure if I have this thing because there's no evidence. And we've seen, I think that has been the complication with the deputy governor's case in Kilifi. Yeah, where it's like, I did not test positive. Then like, okay, so where's the evidence that he tested positive?
That he tested positive, yes.
Exactly.
And
you know how lawyers can spin things.
Yeah, to bring everybody up to speed, Dr. Mercy Korir took a live test of COVID-19, and it was actually being filmed and being broadcast live on TV. We'll be sharing that clip on our social media handles, Spice of MKE on Twitter and Instagram, Spice of MKE. It's also available if you go to YouTube. You'll find it on the KTN News YouTube page. So, Dr. you are in a private facility.
Yes.
We've also seen and heard some instances where they're saying tests done at a private facility also need to be corroborated by government. Is that the case?
Yes. Yes, it is. Actually, if you could see, I actually went to do the test results ready for anything, such that if it had been positive, then it would have been mandatory isolation.
You'd have gone to Mbagathi straight.
I would have gone to Mbagathi, actually.
So I kept wondering why you are dragging along that bag.
Yeah.
Yes. I was ready to go to isolation and survive for 14 days or until I turned negative. So that was the point, because they are mandated by law to report to the Ministry of Health all their data. Everyone they test negative, everyone they test positive. So when the Ministry of Health announces that we've done 13,000 tests, it includes those done by the private facilities.
Okay.
When they say so many people have been positive, if they have any positives from the private facilities, they are also mandated to report to the Ministry of Health. So that was part of the one of the agreements that, if you test positive, sorry, but we have to report to the Ministry of Health, and from there, the Ministry of Health takes over. So you have to go to isolation.
There's somebody that we spoke to here on air, and you were present on that day, around the 28th of March. His name is Stephen. He was at the IDU in Mbagathi.
Yes, I remember.
This is a gentleman who had flown in, and then he had gone straight to, was it Busia? And then he developed some symptoms. He was initially diagnosed Bungoma. Initially diagnosed with malaria. Yeah, you even remember, yes, Sabatia, yes. Diagnosed with malaria and then found to be positive for COVID-19. I reached out to him over the weekend, and he's still in hospital. He has conducted more than 3 tests. All of them come back positive. People have come to Mbagathi. They've left him. He's still there, and he is okay. Not coughing, has no fever. He has no joint aches. He's pretty much okay, but he's testing positive for COVID-19.
And this is actually one of the discussions that we have been having online, offline, and there's the doctor at Nairobi Hospital who's admitted, Dr. Masharia, who was admitted without any symptoms, and all his tests have been coming back positive. So the thing is, from some of the studies done in China, people can continue shedding the virus even up to 39 days. That was the maximum they saw.
Wow.
That they are asymptomatic, nothing else, but they continue shedding the virus up to 39 days. So here in Kenya, what the Ministry of Health criteria for discharge is that you have 2 consecutive samples, 24 hours apart, that turn negative. So that is why now Stephen, Dr. Masharia, and a few other people are still in hospital without any symptoms, nothing. Basically, they are just sleeping and being fed, and doing.
They're not even being given any no medication at all.
There's no treatment. There's nothing, because what are you treating?
So are we saying that somebody like this could
is
pass?
Is he infectious?
Is he infectious?
So that is the thing that the science world has not been able to answer, whether after that long, when somebody is asymptomatic and has had the virus for that long, whether they are still, whether they're infectious or not. They haven't been able to answer it. But what we are seeing happening in the West is that people that do not have any symptoms or have mild symptoms actually stay home. You isolate at home. That you leave the hospital facilities for those who need it. Those who will be critically ill or who have the severe form of the disease, you leave the hospital space for them. So I think for me, it is a matter of the criteria that we are using as a country, which is more hospital-based care as opposed to home-based care. So the fear from the Ministry of Health has been that if we institute home-based care, then we are not sure if people will follow the set guidelines of isolation and whatnot. But you see, the question is, if, let's say, our cases reach the thousands, will we be able to accommodate them?
Yeah, you have people that you're just feeding on a daily basis.
Exactly. And you're billing them for it.
I
think you've seen the bill from KUTRH, Kenyatta University. The people in the private facilities obviously have a bill, and some are paying even as much as 30,000 per day just to be in hospital. Something that you can do at home and have certain requirements from the Ministry of Health. Either you log in your temperature or your whereabouts, where such that you don't even leave the house. There are certain criteria that can be put in place. I think isolation should just be for people who are severely ill, critically ill, or people whose home environment would otherwise not make isolation conducive. Let's say, for example, if you live in a 1 or 2 roomed house with 5 other people, then it means self-isolation in that particular instance will not be possible. So I think we are being hospital-focused instead of being home-based focused for this particular disease. So for me, my question has always been, and I've posed it to some of the officials of the Ministry of Health, is this strategy sustainable? If you need to scale up, can you?
And also,
the day you need to do home-based care, what gaps will you have identified? What things do you think you will need to scale up or de-escalate? Such kind of things when the numbers are high. So nobody has been able to answer that.
City keeps reminding us that we have structures, and we have structures that we can actually just borrow from one area into another. In terms of government management, there's an entire structure of government, coordination of government. There are national government administrative officers at the lowest level. And they even have community policing. We have a Nyumba Kumi initiative. All those things can be used to ensure that home-based care also works for cases where home-based care is possible.
I wouldn't even look at the national government, let's say interior administrative wing, because that gives the disease a certain connotation, which is sort of like almost criminal. Like we've seen how people are being roughed up and picked up in the middle of the night to be taken to quarantine. But I would look at, and City knows this, the HIV structures with the community health workers, the TB structures, and the reproductive health structures. Those already have people all the way down to the community health workers and community health volunteers who actually, like in TB, do what you call direct observed therapy, where they come and make sure that you've taken your TB drugs for 6 months. So if we have these people already on the ground, why not activate them and just add the coronavirus to their list of diseases or list of conditions that they are following up with the people, with the public? Because these are people who are much friendlier, who are known in the communities that they live in. You will know them as
they are acceptable by the community.
Exactly.
You'd think it would be easy, wouldn't it?
So I fail to understand why we want to reinvent the wheel instead of just using the
There's money to be eaten. Listen, somebody who's staying in a public facility, did you see how much they're saying that it's costing to treat one patient at Kenyatta National Hospital? 800,000 shillings. Which is how much it cost us to treat the two patients, the patient 1 and patient 2, Brenda and Brian.
Did they give us a breakdown of this?
800,000 shillings, because our PPE costs 20,000 shillings, and it has.
So you use 1 PPE per patient per day?
Per visit.
Per visit. You use a PPE, and they come in not one. Maybe Dr. Mercy can clarify this for us. The number of people who are coming in to attend to a patient must all be decked in the PPE, right? And after that visit, they disrobe and they get rid of it. On the second visit, they don a new PPE. So you can imagine how many they use over the course of time when you are in.
They haven't invented PPEs that you can just disinfect and use again.
No, not yet.
They're there. No, they're there. There are PPEs that is why
they're not in Kenya.
I think it's just a matter of priorities.
Mercy, pesa lazima tukule. Let's take a look at traffic, and then we come back and continue this conversation from that point that we are leaving it off. 25 minutes to 10 o'clock. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
Okay. Sorry, guys. There's a little bit of traffic still on Thicket Road right around Muthaiga. Understanding that there was an accident at the Pangani underpass. Still waiting for that to be cleared up, but that is the cause of the traffic that you will see. Other parts of the city look very good today. We don't have any problems in Mombasa. If you look into Eldoret, we look quite okay there as well. And also in Kisumu, things are, as they say, hunky-dory. So it looks like traffic will then come in the evening when everybody's trying to beat the curfew times. But for now, not much to report. It's a good Monday morning on the roads.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
It's a Situation Room with Dr. Master.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Just thinking of implementing home-based care for those who test positive and have staying in hospital for those
mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
University Teaching and Referral Research Hospital. Somebody was given a bill here and being in hospital for 13 days. Accommodation, bed, 3,135 per day. Times 13, 40,755. And then from the pharmacy, mouthwash, twice at 185. Total 370.
185?
185 what?
185 shillings.
Oh.
Given twice.
Okay.
Total bill in this hospital, 41,125. This person has been released because they've tested negative, but they've been detained because they have not cleared their bill.
What's
now
going
you
on?
tell me.
See, it's a very tricky situation, and I'd like to make reference to what the Swiss ambassador said about universal health care. If there was universal health coverage, for example, wouldn't even be thinking about these bills or detaining people because they haven't paid something like this in a pandemic. That's one, because your health system would already have been organized in such a way that it has taken care of basics. And for me, such a contagious, highly communicable disease is a basic. It's a basic that the healthcare system should handle. Two, we've taken a loan from the World Bank. 1.5 billion shillings of it is supposed to cater to quarantine and isolation facilities, among other things around, isolation and quarantine.
Yep.
So why are people putting bills to government facilities?
To a government facility.
That is my question. Two, we are having Harambe, the fundraising group team.
Yeah, the Emergency Response Fund.
Yes. Okay. I look at it more as a Harambe to help the coronavirus. All this money is coming in. Shouldn't they cushion Mwananchi from having to incur any other bills because of a disease that is affecting everyone globally?
They should.
Lastly is we are all in dire financial straits. Everyone is struggling. You want to save as much as possible. Then here you are slapped with a bill. Even if it was just the mouthwash alone, 370 shillings. We do not have that money to spare at this particular point in time.
True.
No one has that money to spare, because will you pay that bill, or will you think about how to foot food and other basic requirements for your family, and knowing that now you've been there for 14, 21 days, you haven't been working, some people have been laid off, people are getting salary cuts. Is this really the time that you need to get a bill from the government?
It's not. Even the government itself should not be incurring some of these bills, right? Because, look, in the case of first two patients who tested negative and were released from hospital, KNH said that it cost them 800,000 shillings per person to treat them. Now, 800,000 shillings, if you look at it, these people were there, they were mainly in accommodation. So there's the PPEs that we're using, because every time one of the caregivers comes to you, they have to wear this and then they have to discard it. If you look at the conversation that we were having earlier, why must we have everybody in a hospital? Why must we be giving hospital-based care for such cases?
Exactly. Because if it was somebody, let's say like the people who've been in ICU in critical care, I would understand if the bills get to such an amount, because then they're in critical care. But here you have somebody who is even taking care of their own hygiene. You don't need a nurse to come and change them and turn them and clean them up.
Yeah.
So there's some costs you're not incurring. Two, a facility like Kenyatta National Hospital, any public facility anyway, the staff salaries, for example, are catered for on a different a different line of expenditure.
Yes.
Exactly. So when you say 800,000, 1 million, I would be very interested to see the breakdown of that particular bill, so that we see if it makes any sense. And why are we incurring, in my opinion, unnecessary bills for some people who would otherwise be home, and you just pay the community health workers or the community health volunteers or whichever structures you put in place to go and check on them? That would be a much lesser cost as opposed to having somebody in a hospital and now you're saying this is their bill. And then interestingly, so were these people billed that much, or did they go home free without paying anything? Which, if that is the case, then the people in KU in Bagasi should not get any bills, because it's the same government.
It's the same government, indeed. Dr. We know that you're heading in for some interviews to get us some news stories.
Yes.
So we want to let you go. Do you want to give us a sneak preview of what you're working on, or you want to tell us Goja Ive?
No, this one I can, because I think we've seen globally that our healthcare workers are getting the, let me call it, the limelight. Or this is a time where we are trying to see what is this that these people do. So I'm in one of the hospitals just to see what is it that they're doing in the front lines to take care of COVID-19 positive patients. And it's not just the healthcare workers in clinical practice, but we're also looking at the non-clinical health staff.
Right.
Your cleaners, the person who will transport the patient to whichever ward, or let's say radiology, X-ray, whatever it is that they're doing. So those are the people I'm shining my spotlight on. So we'll be having this every weekend, every Saturday, from 8:30, just a segment to highlight what the healthcare staff are doing for COVID and their day-to-day activities, because other diseases are still happening. People still get malaria, people still need to deliver. So we're just looking at what they are doing in this season of COVID.
Thank you very much. That will be a very interesting story to follow on.
Thank you very much.
We're waiting to see on that. Asante sana for speaking to us.
Thanks, Dr.
Have a good week.
You too.
Join us again tomorrow. Don't tell us about having a good week. Tomorrow you're with us.
Definitely, I'll be there.
Asante.
All right.
Thank you.
Dr. Mercy Korir is KTN's medical journalist. She's working on a story, like she said, on how healthcare workers are basically coping and what they're doing on a daily basis. Plus, despite having COVID-19 in cases in our hospitals, there are still other cases that need to be dealt with in the hospital facilities. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take just a quick break as we take a look at, what else is happening in the world. And then we come back and conclude on the conversation that we've been having this morning, right? Right?
Right?
Right.
As opposed to wrong.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
So the issue of cost is...
Mornings done right. 94.
Cost is something we need to have somebody in authority explain to us. Because one, it's expensive by any standards. Was this person in the ICU? If they were, we know ICU is expensive.
Yeah.
And then I will ask, why were they in the ICU?
Yes. Did they have to go to the ICU?
We've had now cases of people who keep testing positive, and yet there are no symptoms of illnesses, but they're positive. Those who've tested positive after a period in quarantine or isolation have tested again and they were negative and they've gone home. We've spoken of a case today of someone who tested positive, tested negative, went home, came back, died of some complications of the heart. So, in short, there are many things that can happen to someone who tests positive, COVID positive. So, the idea of keeping people in quarantine in such cases, we understand. There's need, but the cost.
The cost is a big issue.
What is this thing that is being done that costs so much money?
Well, I mean, if you look at if you want to give an example of somebody then who was done with the cycle of treatment and they got mouthwash and they got cough syrup a couple of times.
No, just mouthwash.
Just mouthwash. Okay, the cough syrup did not even come into play. All right. So you're going to charge him 41,000 shillings. And so the main cost came now from the bed.
It's the bed.
That's the bed. It's because in terms of treatment.
It's a bed that's 3,000 per day.
Per day.
Right.
Right, so the treatment of this thing itself, and this is what I'm telling you, such stories like this come out into the public, people are not going to present themselves for testing.
Yeah,
people are not going to present themselves for treatment in hospital. They'll stay at home and say, let me manage this thing in the house.
Why don't we sort of like break this thing down a little bit, huh? You know, when you're sick in a hospital, when you have been hospitalized, there is the doctor who looks after you. There's the nursing. There's let's talk about the health care members of staff.
Personnel.
All right? Then, these are the people who give you drugs on a daily basis at specific times. Now, if you ask on a daily basis, tell them, please tell me what you've given me.
Yeah.
They'll give you a breakdown. Most people don't know that you can ask for this. And you can tell them, give me a breakdown with the costs. They will give you the breakdown with the costs. And you even have a right to ask, why is this costing me this? And what does it do? If you don't ask that question, then that's where we arrive at this point where you have a case of someone who's being told he's been treated, he's been given a bill, and wondering, how did we get cough syrup? How did we get to 41,000? Okay, they gave me some other medication. How did it get to this again? Those questions arise with the lack of clarity. Then there's a pharmacy department, because they're the ones who actually issue the drugs as they're prescribed, and they're the ones who do the costing. This medical staff, they don't do that work. It's not their work. They're the ones who do it. So sometimes if you don't query this, and even if you're about to leave, and you go and a bill is presented, you can actually collapse and be hospitalized again, because you'll be wondering what on earth you were doing and why it costs so much.
Now, well, I mean, this gentleman is still in hospital. He's still in hospital. He's been detained because he cannot pay.
And of course, he's accruing the extra
the
bed
next
charges.
few days, they're going to feed you, right?
You see, a problem arises here. And that's why you'll find many insurance companies, for instance, if we leave COVID aside, have now employed medical doctors to help them understand these things. Some have even employed pharmacists to help them understand how does this costing work. Because they also feel that they're being ripped up by hospitals. And these doctors, by the way, will visit you.
They'll visit you.
I'm so-and-so. I work for your insurer. I've just come to find out how you're doing, and they'll bring you some lovely looking card, talk to you for a little while. Yes, ask you how the weather is in the hospital, at which point you will keep quiet because you're not sure what you should tell him.
Yeah.
Yes, after all, you're in hospital. But those questions have to be asked. And then there's the issue of keeping you longer, even when you're willing to pay. They'll tell you, oh, there's a delay, you want to be kept here longer. I speak as someone who told them, I am leaving. I wasn't wheeled in here. I mean, I was wheeled in. I was wheeled in because it's the procedure, but I brought myself in. There is no more treatment that is being given. I'm not spending another night.
Don't need to spend time.
No, I'm not. Point blank. You sort it out, but I'm leaving.
As you're sorting it out, I'm on my way out.
Which is the basic point.
Yes,
now, in this particular case of COVID-19, I think we should move into that protocol immediately and start saying, look, if you are exhibiting these symptoms, you've tested positive, yes, and it's possible for us to come and visit and inspect where you live and see it's possible for you to isolate yourself. Then go straight ahead and say, this person isolate themselves, call 719 on a daily basis and report your status.
You know something?
We already have that system working. Safaricom has deployed 3,000 call center workers. They're there waiting. You just say, so-and-so will be calling at this time every day.
Eric, you've actually hit the nail on the head. Why is it that this protocol has not been public? Make it. Like we're making
money, that
wash your hands,
5B
wash
must
your nose.
find
So
a
the way
way.
we're saying that one is very clear.
Yes.
The other issues that now are actually vital to the
Tell
healing
us
and
the
restoration of
protocol.
people
Tell
should
us
know.
the protocol.
Yeah.
Across board.
Publish it. The way you keep sending these fortnightly messages and then monthly messages about washing our hands and cleaning our noses. That same avenue should be used. If you can't get Safaricom to do it for you, they're very good at sending messages every day, twice a day, 3 times a day.
The minute you pick up your phone, there's a message, right?
Usually there's a
Short
message.
of telling you good morning and good night.
Yes, exactly.
They can tell you.
We're not sure of the protocols.
We don't know.
So if it is claimed that someone has broken the protocol, they could as well shoot back and say, but what are these protocols?
We are here in Kenya, right? You are aware of the protocols in China.
Yes.
In another
In another country, another
hemisphere.
part of the world.
Right? You know what's going on
China
there.
is far.
It's far. Omo is far. Here, MOH.
It's far.
You don't know.
It's far. MOH
From Kenya,
here.
do you know how many hours of flight it is? 14.
It's a 14-hour flight.
You can sleep, wake up, and have breakfast, probably even twice.
The direct flight.
But you know the protocol. But you know the protocol for COVID treatment in that country.
Yes, you do.
Here, people are being asked exactly what am I
know.
being charged for? What happens when I go into quarantine?
What happens?
What is supposed
What am I
to going
supposed to
on?
do? After this, what is supposed
After
to
I've
happen?
tested negative, what is the protocol generally? Can I go home? Must I remain? How much does it cost? Is there a blanket cost?
All right.
What am I supposed to
There
be
are other
treated
issues
Those
with?
are things you should be told well in advance.
on.
From the very beginning. Now,
We should know.
the other school of thought is this, right? So the people who are in the public facilities, in the initial cohort of the quarantine people, right? The ones that went into KMTC, they went into, KMTC here at Kenyatta Hospital and the other one in Karen. The ones that were released did not pay a cent, right? So this, of course, is the bill that's going to be put into that whole World Bank money. Is it also possible, and this is where the conspiracy theories around the country are also now saying, when you see this, if you look at the facilities whose quarantine period has been extended by a further 14 days, they're all these public facilities. They're full. Is it a way just to ramp up the numbers and say we have X number of people in quarantine at any one time, so that's how come the money that we had, this is where the money went? Is this one of those things? Absence of clarity breeds such conspiracies. Because how the conspiracies start breeding, we are detaining people in quarantine facilities longer than they should be, for no apparent reason, and there's a cost in involvement here. What's happening? The other one is now we are saying that anybody who is now even arrested at night shall be taken to these same quarantine facilities at some cost. Is this own cost also going to be billed somewhere to some donor or to some government department? City Muga was arrested somewhere. No, the other city.
No, I'm a good example to give. Yes, I look like the sort of person who ought to be arrested. So carry on, Eric. Yes.
Was arrested
These
somewhere.
self-fulfilling prophecies that you're now bringing here. City.
Taken to some quarantine for 14 days.
And nobody
Bills
knows.
2,000 bob per day. Nobody knows. Bills 2,000 bob per day. Pays and goes home. But in government papers, we are still billing the exchequer.
Right, and saying that we're taking care of COVID cases with this money that supposedly has come through. This information needs to be made public. The reason why people now look, when this all started and the first case of COVID was found in this country, what was the first thing that was said? It's a lie. There's
the
money
money they
coming in.
wanted.
Why did that happen? Because there's information that you're not giving people, and then they're able to make inferences based on this vacuum that you have left. Plug the holes with the right information. Tell people what they're supposed to expect. Tell people what the protocol is.
Be honest and truthful.
Be honest and open. And I'll go back to that statement that was made in The Economist long ago. One of the ways in which you're going to be able to fight COVID is with honesty. Tell people what is really happening. Because in the absence of that, that's why we have this. That's why people say, come on, we can still go and drink, we can still go and do whatever, because after all, even what is happening within the 4 walls of a quarantine facility, they're not even telling us, we don't even know.
You know, the inferences you speak of are born out of experience. The citizenry, these were ordinary citizens telling you what they think. Why? Because they have witnessed this sort of thing over and over. So tell them, they tell you, no.
This is somewhere in Makueni. The CEC for Health Makueni came and told us the same thing. When he went round in Makueni asking people, have you guys heard of this? The mamas at the market were like, ni pesa mlikuwa mnataka, pesa imekuja, just leave us alone.
In the field of HIV and AIDS, you would find people asking, why are people driving these huge cars? Is this money not supposed to be treating? I tell them, no. The funding for cars is separate. Said, but okay, fine, we've understood. But then there's so-and-so who comes from my village. Since he started working, this man left university 2 years ago. How come he has built such a big house? How much do people pay him? You pause. Now,
and those are valid questions.
Oh, they are so valid,
those
keep
are
quiet.
Valid questions.
So you started saying, maybe we need to look into this.
This HIV is a cash cow. You guys are coming to tell us stories here just so that you can make money.
Actually, and they were saying,
and they're right.
People will tell you point blank, if we didn't have HIV, you would have no work.
So you should be thanking us.
So you should be listening to what
we're the ones who are telling you. Good Lord.
A good point to end the show, City. Tell us about today's proverb. And now this one you have to explain.
Okay.
It's been a long weekend.
Yes. Milk and honey don't have the same color, but share the same household peacefully. The point is this. Your functions may be the same, but you operate in a different sphere. In this COVID season, there are all sorts of people who are offering help. Manufacturers, administrators, business people, bankers, people in the media. Everyone who can afford, a simple mwananchi just wanting to contribute what he can to whatever group of people he knows are receiving help on behalf of others. Now, these people may have very different political views. They may have very different views on how social matters should be tackled. But the household they're in is called the season of COVID-19. And they're all doing what they can to make sure that this particular enemy is defeated. Now, as you can see, the only place where we're hearing of infighting is within government. And the fighting is who is going to control the money. You have not heard people fighting in the private sector about, the money is given, people are doing it themselves, but you can see the commonality of the fight. That's what we're saying. They exist in this same season. The house in this season is called COVID-19, and they're coexisting.
And
so
milk and honey
don't have the same color,
but
they coexist peacefully. They serve the same purpose in a home.
Asante sana.
They are nutrition.
Asante sana. Ndu, parting shot. Viva.
Behave. Come on, guys.
Behave yourself.
Behave.
See you again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock.